The Sorcerer, The Path to Transcendence starting from Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 The Fisherman Benefits. Tasuku Tokimi had always been known for his calmness and wisdom. In the fierce battle, his eyes were like a hawk, constantly searching for his opponent's weaknesses. He keenly seized on a fleeting flaw and launched a counterattack without hesitation. His hands danced, his magical power surged, and a raging flame roared like a raging dragon, shooting towards Matao Korea. The flames were so intense that the air distorted and burned wherever they passed. Matao Korea reacted quickly. Firebugs, a swarm of strange insects, emerged from the ground. These insects radiated a strange light, their shells as hard as iron, making them extremely resistant to fire magic. The flames collided with the insect barrier with a dull sound and sparks. However, the insects held their line firmly, successfully blocking the fierce flames. Tasuku Tokimi, seeing his strike miss, remained undeterred and continued his attack. His eyes gleamed with determination, and his hands continuously transformed into magical gestures. At that moment, a sudden, bang, gunshot rang out, shattering the tense atmosphere on the battlefield. Tasuku Tokimi felt a sharp pain in his right hand. He looked down and saw that it had been struck by a bullet. The powerful impact shattered his palm, leaving it bloody and mangled. His cane fell to the ground with a resounding thud. Even with such severe trauma, Tasuku Tokimi remained calm. His mind raced, mulling over the current situation. It was a sniper rifle. The only person who wields firearms is Imai Kiritsugu, the Magus killer. He instantly determined the attacker's identity. Meanwhile, Matao Korea hadn't yet realized what had happened. Bang, bang, two shots rang out, and Matao Korea collapsed to the ground in agony. His knee was bruised and bleeding. He struggled to dodge, but felt a chill on his neck. "Don't move," a cold voice rang out, and Saber's sword was already at his throat. Seeing the situation dire, Tasuku Tokimi took the opportunity to run towards the nearby woods, hoping for a chance to escape. However, he had barely taken a few steps when Imai Kiritsugu, holding him back at gunpoint, forced him back. It turned out it had been drawn there by the commotion caused by Weiss's attack. Unexpectedly encountering Matao Korea and Tasuku Tokimi there, Imai Kiritsugu immediately devised a plan to capture them alive. With his calm composure and brilliant tactical planning, his plan went smoothly. Ultimately, he used an Ainsburn tool to seal the magic within them, successfully controlling the situation. Imai Kiritsugu pressed his gun firmly against Matao Korea's head, his gaze cold and piercing. "Where's Alice?" His voice was low and oppressive. However, Matao Korea ignored Imai Kiritsugu. He looked past Imai Kiritsugu, gazing intently at the utterly distraught Tasuku Tokimi, and taunted him, "I never thought you'd end up like this." At that moment, he felt a profound sense of relief, as if years of resentment had finally been released. Seeing the once almighty and invincible Tasuku Tokimi now in such a state of desolation, Matao Korea's heart was filled with pleasure. Bang! Imai Kiritsugu unhesitatingly shot Matao Korea in the thigh with his gun. His face showed no mercy. "Answer my question," he repeated. Matao Korea let out a creepy laugh, filled with madness and defiance. "Is that all you can do?" His tone was filled with disdain. Imai Kiritsugu's torture was nothing to him. The pain of having the crest worms implanted in his body, being gnawed all over his body, was far more agonizing than being shot. The worms crawled freely through his body, gnawing at his flesh and soul. The pain was unimaginable to ordinary people. Imai Kiritsugu's eyes grew even colder. Without hesitation, he drew a dagger and stabbed it into Matao Korea's abdomen, stirring it continuously. Cold sweat broke out on Matao Korea's forehead, his face turning pale, but his eyes remained filled with stubborn determination. "That's enough." Imai Kiritsugu once again pressed his gun against Matao Korea's head, his heart filled with anger and helplessness. "Shoot. Shoot now if you dare," Matao Korea roared, his eyes filled with madness and defiance. Imai Kiritsugu was caught in a dilemma. He knew that if he shot, he might never find Alice, but if he didn't, Matao Korea wouldn't easily reveal Alice's location. "It's useless," Tasuku Tokimi said from the side. He survived the transformation of the Matao family's crest worms. Ordinary punishments won't work on him, and he only has 2 months to live. A complex emotion flashed in Tasuka Tokiyami's eyes. He felt a touch of sympathy for Mato Kariya's plight, yet also a sense of helplessness at his madness. How could a man destined to die fear death? Tasuka Tokiyami knew this well, knowing that Imaya Kiritsugu's actions were futile. Mato Kariya burst into laughter, his laughter filled with madness and despair. That's right. If you want to know your wife's whereabouts, kill him. Mato Kariya pointed his right finger at Tasuka Tokiyami, his eyes filled with defiance. He knew Imaya Kiritsugu wouldn't kill Tasuka Tokiyami easily, as he needed more information from him. But he also knew his life was running out, and he wanted to use these final moments to exact his revenge on Tasuka Tokiyami. Imaya Kiritsugu certainly wouldn't kill Tasuka Tokiyami so easily, as he still had so much crucial information to gain from him. He put away his gun and pulled out a stun gun from his pocket. Without hesitation, he pressed it against Mato Kariya and flipped the switch. Instantly, a powerful electric current coursed through Mato Kariya's body, causing him to tremble violently before losing consciousness and falling into coma. Imaya Kiritsugu looked at the unconscious Mato Kariya, feeling no pity. He was about to use the same method on Tasuka Tokiyami when something unexpected happened. A masked figure suddenly appeared behind him, as silent as a ghost. The man's movements were incredibly agile, his hand tightly gripping a sharp dagger that gleamed coldly in the dim light. Without hesitation, he slashed the dagger towards Imaya Kiritsugu's neck, moving so swiftly that the opponent had no time to react. When? Imaya Kiritsugu's heart was filled with shock and confusion. Chapter 227 Yellow Bird. He had completely failed to notice that someone else was lurking here. He had always thought he had the situation under control, but he hadn't expected such a surprise to occur at this crucial moment. His mind raced, mulling over a plan. But in this crucial moment, he had no time to react. Saber's eyes flashed, and she swung her holy sword fiercely at Assassin. The sword radiated a divine light, as if it could sever all evil. Assassin, seeing this, quickly raised his dagger to block, but the indestructible holy sword sliced through it like soft butter. The powerful impact of the dagger traveled through Assassin's wrist, and with a snap, the entire right wrist was severed. Saber, without a moment's pause, countercut, the holy sword slashing in a graceful arc with lightning speed, precisely severing Assassin's head. So weak. Is this guy really a heroic spirit? A flicker of doubt crossed Saber's mind. At that moment, another masked figure suddenly emerged from the ground. This figure moved with incredible agility, swiftly picking up Tasuka Tokiyami and turning to run. It's a clone. Imaya Kiritsugu instantly assessed the other party's abilities. Immediately afterwards, several clones of Assassin appeared simultaneously, blocking Saber and Imaya Kiritsugu's path like ghosts. Two masters have joined forces, Imaya Kiritsugu pondered. In the Holy Grail War, there can only be one victor, and trust between masters is as fragile as paper, making the chances of joining forces extremely low. Saber, chase after them, Imaya Kiritsugu commanded decisively. But, Saber hesitated, worried that Imaya Kiritsugu wouldn't be able to handle Assassin's clones. These clones are very weak, Imaya Kiritsugu said calmly. He was confident in his marksmanship, and he had other helpers. Saber, hesitant, turned and gave chase. Being able to defeat two rivals at once was the best option. Assassin, carrying Tasuka Tokiyami, sped through the dense forest at breakneck speed. It must be said that Imaya Kiritsugu was well prepared. Saber caught up on an off-road motorcycle. Modified through Innsburn alchemy, the motorcycle boasted exceptional performance. Saber possessed A-rank driving skills, and the motorcycle's power greatly conserved her mana and stamina. She stared intently at Assassin's figure ahead. Instantly, Assassin spawned dozens of clones, attacking Saber like a tidal wave. Each clone moved with agility, like countless dark shadows darting through the air, brimming with murderous intent. The daggers in their hands flashed with a cold light, like deadly fangs, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Saber showed no fear, resolutely drawing her holy sword. Her eyes were firm and sharp, and she met the enemy's attack fearlessly. She swung the holy sword in her hand, creating dazzling flashes of light and shadow, each swing imbued with immense power. However, Saber's vision was obscured by the numerous clones, and she did not see Assassin quietly hand Tasuka Tokiyami over to Kotomin Kairi. Kotomin Kairi stood aside, his expression impassive, watching the battle between Saber and Assassin, his eyes unmoved. Stop Saber, even if it means death, Kotomin Kairi commanded calmly, his voice dripping with coldness. Yes, Assassin's clones responded in unison, charging at Saber with even greater frenzy. A command seal vanished from Katamin Kyrie's hand, but his face held no trace of regret. He simply watched calmly. Then, with an impassive expression, he carried Tasuka Tokiyami on his back and quickly departed. Kirii, thank you very much for this time, Tasuka Tokiyami said weakly. This is all I have to do, master. Katamin Kyrie acted like a proper disciple, respectful and obedient. Tasuka Tokiyami closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on a small bed, his wound simply bandaged. Katamin Kyrie pushed open the door and entered, handing him a cup of water, whispering, "It's safe here." Tasuka Tokiyami took the cup, took a sip, and then asked, "What happened next?" Tasuka Tokiyami briefly recounted what had happened since he lost consciousness. The battle between Weiss and Gilgamesh ended with Weiss's retreat, an assassin was slain by Saber. Is that so? Tasuka Tokiyami looked at his disciple and said soothingly, "Thank you for your hard work." Katamin Kyrie said nothing, simply standing there quietly. Tasuka Tokiyami thought he was grieving over Assassin's death and was about to offer comfort when a familiar voice rang out. How disgraceful! Hearing this familiar voice, Tasuka Tokiyami immediately rose from the bed and knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty," Tasuka Tokiyami said respectfully. Gilgamesh's eyes were filled with disdain. How shameful! Tasuka Tokiyami lowered his head, not daring to meet Gilgamesh's gaze. "King," Tasuka Tokiyami explained anxiously, "this is because Gilgamesh refused to listen. You are no longer qualified." Tasuka Tokiyami's face was filled with astonishment, unsure of what Gilgamesh meant. He could only stare blankly at Gilgamesh with a startled expression. Just then, black blood began to flow from his nose. "What? That glass of water is poisoned." Tasuka Tokiyami's expression shifted from astonishment to confusion and anger. He pointed at Katamin Kyrie. Why, Katamin Kyrie wasn't a villain, but he was a bad man. He wasn't cruel, but he was evil. He was born with a personality flaw. He couldn't see beauty in things people called beautiful, and he couldn't forget things many people called ugly. In his youth, he was troubled by his perceptual distortions and tried hard to correct them, but under Gilgamesh's guidance, he had developed a more optimistic attitude. His goal was not the Holy Grail, but rather the birth of a being, he believed, born with the same inherent malignity as himself, Angora Manayu, the all evil in the world, Angora Manayu. In short, Katamin Kyrie was a perverted individual. Tasuka Tokiyami's hatred was like a surging wave, constantly impacting Katamin Kyrie's heart. However, Katamin Kyrie was not affected by the strong emotion at all. On the contrary, a strange pleasure surged in his heart. The more Tasuka Tokiyami hated him, the happier he was. In this hatred, he could find a unique happiness. Tasuka Tokiyami widened his eyes, with flames of anger burning in them. His body trembled slightly because of pain and unwillingness. He never thought that he would be betrayed by his most trusted disciple. He tried to struggle, tried to resist, but the poison had already spread rapidly in his body, and his strength was disappearing bit by bit. In the interweaving of unwillingness and pain, Tasuka Tokiyami eventually lost his life. Chapter 228 Exchange. In a tangle of resentment and pain, Tasuka Tokiyami ultimately lost his life. His eyes remained wide open, expressing his anger and confusion. Too short, this thought flashed through Katamin Kyrie's mind. He slowly absorbed the feeling of Tasuka Tokiyami's hatred, a complex and indescribable emotion. Ha ha ha, Gilgamesh observed the scene and laughed heartily. You're indeed much more interesting than Tasuka Tokiyami, Gilgamesh's words tinged with admiration, as he looked at Katamin Kyrie as if he had found a new toy. Katamin Kyrie stood there quietly, his face expressionless. His heart was filled with a happiness and satisfaction he had just felt. He cared little for anything else. When Weiss arrived at the scene, the place where the fierce battle had taken place was now hushed, as if the noise and turmoil had never occurred. Lying alone on the scene was a single piece of paper, trembling slightly in the breeze. Weiss approached with steady steps, bowed slightly, and reached out with slender fingers to pick up the note. Unfolding it, he saw only a simple address and time, no other information. Matau Korea has failed, Weiss muttered softly to himself. However, his face didn't betray a trace of worry. He still had Plan B. Everything was under control. No matter how the situation morphed, he had a plan. Back in the lab, dim light shone in every corner. Alice was still lying naked on the lab table. Her fair skin shone with a strange glow in the dim light, like a piece of exquisite art. "You're lucky. Imaya Kiritsugu has kidnapped Matao Korea and wants me to use you in exchange." Upon hearing this, Alice didn't want to respond. She simply lay there quietly, her eyes empty and cold, like a bottomless pool, without a ripple. However, Weiss wasn't embarrassed by this. He was already accustomed to Alice's reactions. He gently touched Alice with his staff. Instantly, a blue light flashed in Alice's eyes, a mysterious and profound light, as if emanating from the depths of the endless universe, imbued with an elusive power. Alice gently rolled down from the lab table, her movements smooth and graceful. Without hesitation, she knelt on her knees, leaning slightly forward. With a look of respectful respect, she addressed Weiss. "Master." Weiss looked at Alice kneeling before him and nodded in satisfaction. He led Alice slowly out of the lab. At the door, they encountered Matao Sakura. Matao Sakura's small figure stood silently, apparently having been waiting for a long time. Her hood was lowered, her long purple hair cascading down her face, obscuring her expression. She remained silent, like a statue. Perhaps out of fear of Weiss, or perhaps still struggling to recover from the trauma, she dared not raise her head or utter a single sound. Weiss looked at the timid little girl before him. He reached out and gently stroked Sakura's head. "I'll bring Korea back." Weiss's voice was low but firm. "Thank you." Sakura's voice was soft, barely above the hum of a mosquito. If it weren't for Weiss's enhanced body, he wouldn't have been able to hear what she said. This was the first time Sakura had spoken to Weiss, and her voice was tinged with nervousness and shyness. Weiss paused and looked back at Sakura. "Don't worry," he said again. Sakura raised her head slightly, a faint smile flickering across her face. It was like a spring flower, shy yet full of life. "Very cute, smile more often," Weiss said, and left with Alice. Following the address on the note, Weiss arrived at an abandoned factory on the outskirts of Fuyuki City. The factory was completely silent, devoid of a single soul. Weeds grew over the barren grounds, and the dilapidated factory buildings creaked in the wind, a testament to its former glory and present desolation. Imaya Kiritsugu had chosen this location. It must have been a trap. Weiss knew this, of course, but she wasn't worried. When he entered the factory, 2 sniper rifles were already trained on him. The dark muzzles resembled the eyes of the Grim Reaper, emitting a cold murderous intent. Both sniper rifles were loaded with magic bullets derived from the ribs of Kiritsugu, the source of both severance and combination. These magic bullets were made by removing the first and second ribs from Kiritsugu's flanks, grinding them into powder, and then condensing them through spiritual engineering. These cores were then sealed into 66 rounds of ammunition. They were specially prepared for the Holy Grail War and were extremely powerful. 8 had already been used against Assassin, leaving 58 remaining. "Master, should we shoot?" Hisamaya asked over the intercom. Hisamaya and Imaya Kiritsugu occupied 2 commanding heights in the factory, keeping their sights fixed on Weiss. Hisamaya's voice was calm and steady, without a trace of panic. Maya was an orphan whom Imaya Kiritsugu had found on the battlefield as a child. From then on, Maya remained by Kiritsugu's side, learning combat techniques. As she learned, she assisted Kiritsugu, becoming his most capable assistant. Besides being Kiritsugu's assistant and apprentice, she was also his lover. "Wait a minute, I'm not sure if this person is the real one." Kiritsugu's voice came over the intercom, his tone filled with caution. After 2 battles, Weiss had leaked a lot of information. Knowing that Weiss could perform clone magic, they were hesitant to shoot. Weiss faced the sniper rifle aimed at her without panic. He was as leisurely as if taking an after-dinner stroll. He closed his eyes slightly, intently sensing the fluctuations of magic around him. Soon, he sensed the deliberate emanation of magic from Artoria. He immediately understood that she was guiding him. He walked steadily, turning left and right through the abandoned factory. The surroundings were dark and damp, and the shabby machinery and piles of debris exuded a decaying smell. Finally, inside a factory building, he saw Saber, who had been waiting for him for a long time. Saber stood tall and straight, like a beautiful statue. "Long time no see," Weiss greeted her like an old acquaintance, a faint smile on her face. However, Saber's expression was not kind to him. Her eyes were filled with anger and disgust. She pointed her sword at him and shouted, "Despicable wretch," full of condemnation for Weiss. Chapter 229 begins. "That's excessive. You did the same thing," Weiss's words echoed through the abandoned factory. Saber bit her lip, unsure how to retort. She understood that in this brutal Holy Grail war, all factions had resorted to less than honorable means to achieve their goals. But as the King of Knights, she still felt a pang of displeasure at such behavior. Don't argue with him. Exchange hostages immediately. Emilia Kiritsugu's voice rang through the headset, its voice unmistakable and resolute. Saber frowned slightly. Though reluctant, she had no choice but to obey her master's command. She opened the passageway leading underground, which was filled with a damp and faintly musty smell. She pointed her sword at the passage, signaling Weiss to follow. But Weiss made no move. He stood there silently. You are so insincere, Weiss slowly gestured, and suddenly lightning flashed from Alice's body. The lightning slithered through her like a silver snake, and Alice convulsed and fell to the ground in pain. Alice, Saber exclaimed. I'm not completely unprepared. Weiss's voice was calm and cold. You bastard, Saber glared at Weiss. Same here, Weiss would not be led by the enemy's nose. In this war of intrigue and deception, he must remain vigilant at all times. Since you lack sincerity, the deal is void. Weiss extended his right hand, and a golden spear instantly appeared, radiating a dazzling light. He made a gesture as if to nail Alice to death. Stop, Saber didn't dare to bet on whether Weiss was really going to do this. Worry filled her heart. She could only ask her master, Kiritsugu. The most sensible thing to do was to detonate the explosives hidden underground, ending the deal once and for all. However, Emilia Kiritsugu was not a robot. He had his own feelings. He already felt guilty towards Alice, so how could he watch her die before his eyes? May I? Emilia Kiritsugu's voice was low and decisive. Yes, master. Hisayu Maya slid down from the rooftop, her agility surpassing even that of a soldier king. Like a nimble black cat, she darted through the abandoned factory. She opened a room and escorted Matao Kariya out. Matao Kariya's face was filled with anger and resentment. I never thought the King of Knights would resort to such tricks. This goes against the way of chivalry, Weiss teased, a hint of sarcasm in his tone. Altria's expression faltered. Of course, she disapproved of this plan. But in this war, the decision-making power lay beyond her, so she could only remain silent. Weiss, Matao Kariya, seeing Weiss coming to his rescue, was initially embarrassed, then roared, "Leave me alone. Kill them all." He began to struggle relentlessly, like a trapped beast. Hey, be quiet, Hisayu Maya, unable to control Matao Kariya, struck him on the back of the head with the butt of her rifle. But Matao Kariya continued to roar. Alright, you're making me deaf. Weiss gestured for Matao Kariya to shut up. That girl, Sakura, is still waiting for you to come back. Hearing Matao Sakura's name, Matao Kariya instantly calmed down. That girl is worried about me. Matao Kariya's voice was filled with a hint of surprise and emotion. Weiss nodded. I already promised that girl to bring you back. Sakura, tears streamed from the corners of Matao Kariya's eyes, their shimmering beauty glistening in the dim factory. Alright, let's begin the hostage exchange. Weiss lifted Alice with his right hand, and Hisamaya untied Matao Kariya. I'll count to 3, and everyone let go. Weiss's voice echoed through the factory. 3, 2, 1, the two loosened their grip, and Matao Kariya and Alice moved closer, then brushed past each other. They each returned to their respective groups. Weiss examined Matao Kariya's body and found nothing amiss. Knowing that Matao Kariya won't live long, they didn't leave any backup plans, or were they confident they could keep me here? Weiss pondered. Saber, over there, carefully examined Alice's body, confirming she was unharmed before she breathed a sigh of relief. Weiss opened a dimensional rift and shoved Matao Kariya inside. Hisamaya immediately left with Alice. Saber had already raised her holy sword, which emanated a sacred light. Want to fight? Weiss spread her hands. I'm already exhausted today and don't want to fight. That's not up to you. Saber finished speaking, and a red light shot out from each corner of the factory. Like a burning flame, it spread rapidly, forming a barrier surrounding the factory. They've sealed off the space. Not completely, but the time it takes to open it has been extended. With Saber's swordsmanship, she can defeat me in that time. Weiss's heart tightened, knowing he was in danger. And with 3 of them, he couldn't afford to be careless. Great strength, agility, various buffing spells enveloped him like a dazzling halo, and Weiss's body shimmered with brilliant colors. He gripped his spear tightly, ready for the coming battle. Saber held her sword tightly in both hands, her eyes like a sharp blade, staring directly at Weiss. Her figure flashed like lightning, dashing towards Weiss in an instant. Her speed was so fast that it was almost impossible to see her movements. She raised her sword high and struck Weiss's head. This strike was filled with a boundless fury of Artoria. Her heart was filled with anger and resentment towards Weiss. Weiss raised his spear without hesitation to block. Clang, the two artifacts collided with a deafening roar. The sound was like thunder, exploding in the air and sending up a powerful wave of air. This wave of air spread out in all directions like a surging wave. The dilapidated factory building could no longer withstand the tremendous impact and began to crumble. Huge cracks appeared on the walls, and tiles fell from the roof. Weiss's feet sank deeply into the ground, as if pulled by a powerful force. His arms trembled constantly, because of the terrifying strength contained in Altria's small body. Even with the buff magic Weiss cast, he could only barely hold on. A trace of effort appeared on his face. But he knew he couldn't retreat and had to take the initiative into his own hands. Altria knew this too, and she would not give Weiss any chance. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Holy Sword. Saber's sword swung with increasing swiftness, descending upon Weiss like a raging storm. Each strike carried immense power and fierce momentum, capable of severing anything in half. Weiss struggled mightily to resist, beads of sweat gradually forming on his forehead, his hands trembling slightly from the immense force. He knew full well that his physical skills were only level 2 according to the system, while Altria, as the Night King, possessed at least level 6. He was completely outmatched in this area. However, Weiss was no mere warrior, he was a magician with his own unique fighting style. Lightning, Weiss shouted, and a powerful burst of lightning erupted from him. The lightning danced through the air like countless silver snakes, crackling and scorching. The powerful electrical current scorched the air around him. Altria refused to retreat, her eyes revealing determination and fearlessness. She charged towards Weiss, seemingly unafraid of the mighty force. Relying on your high magic resistance, you're going to take me down in one fell swoop, Weiss pondered. At that moment, a flash of light appeared from Weiss's sleeve. It moved with incredible speed, shooting towards Artoria like a meteor. It aimed for her eyes, an extremely dangerous target. Artoria reacted quickly, ducking her head at the last second. Despite her swift movements, a scratch remained on her face. Though the scratch wasn't deep, it slowed her movement for a moment. Weiss took the opportunity to distance himself, a sly look in his eyes. "Wind wings," he whispered softly. A pair of transparent sign wings slowly unfolded from his back, seemingly formed from the purest element of wind, radiating a mysterious glow. With a gentle flap, Weiss soared through the roof and soared into the sky. His figure, like a bird, swiftly retreated from the perilous battlefield. Artoria stood atop the ruins, a hint of frustration in her eyes. She gazed at Weiss in the sky, feeling helpless. Her opponent had taken to the skies, and she wasn't good at aerial combat, making her a formidable opponent. How many types of magic does this guy possess? Doubt and unease filled her heart, astounded by Weiss's endless repertoire. She felt a surge of anxiety, unsure how to face this formidable foe. She gripped her sword tightly. "Saber, calm down," Emilia Kiritsugu's calm voice came through the earpiece, acting like a tranquilizer, calming Artoria's flustered heart. His voice was steady and powerful. "Master, what should we do now?" Artoria's voice was filled with a hint of urgency. She was completely at a loss, and could only turn to Emilia Kiritsugu for help. What she hadn't noticed was how much she was becoming increasingly dependent on him. "Don't worry," Emilia Kiritsugu's voice remained calm and confident. "Everything is going according to plan. Reload the magazine," he commanded. Hiseu Mei sprang into action, expertly switching to standard armor-piercing rounds. She aimed at Weiss in the sky and fired without hesitation. A series of gunshots rang out, and bullets rained down on Weiss. Weiss didn't even move. Before the bullets could reach him, he fluttered his wings. Formed from pure wind element, his wings created a powerful blast of air. Like a hurricane, this current instantly blew the bullets away. The blast sent them flying everywhere, some even embedding themselves in the surrounding walls and ground. Wind blades, Weiss wings vibrated rapidly, their speed dazzling. With each vibration, countless razor-sharp air blades rained down like a torrential downpour, blanketing the entire factory like rain. The blades were incredibly sharp. Trees snapped instantly under the blades, their cuts smooth as mirrors. The factory walls were shattered, fragments flying everywhere. Electric poles were severed in half, falling to the ground with a dull thud. Everything was cut in half, the entire factory reduced to ruins. Boom, smoke billowed. The smoke quickly spread, shrouding the entire battlefield in a hazy haze. But Weiss didn't stop. He placed his hands on his chest. A miniature tornado appeared in his palms, like a miniature storm, radiating immense power. The tornado swirled within his grasp, making a whirring sound. Weiss released his grip, and the tornado grew larger, swirling and roaring. By the time it touched the ground, it had grown hundreds of meters high. The powerful suction of the tornado swept everything around it in, hauling rubble, debris, and broken machinery into the air. The scene was a scene of apocalypse, a terrifying scene. Saber, Emiyakiritsugu roared, a cry that seemed to erupt from the depths of his soul. His eyes were filled with anxiety and worry, and veins bulged on his forehead. Stop him! Upon hearing Emiyakiritsugu's cry, Artoria's eyes instantly hardened. She raised her holy sword aloft with both hands. Excalibur, she shouted the sword's name, as if declaring her resolve to the entire world. The holy sword transformed her magic power into light, a radiance like a brilliant star, illuminating the entire battlefield. A beam of light shot up into the sky, seemingly piercing the heavens. Then, like a laser beam, it emanated from the tip of the sword as it swung downward, carrying unparalleled power. The tornado was instantly severed by this powerful attack. Unrelenting, it continued its charge, shattering the barrier and sending it flying for several kilometers. The immense force of the impact shook the earth before the attack slowly dissipated. Unable to withstand such an onslaught, the ground cracked and formed massive fissures. The blow was immense, and Weiss, anticipating the danger, quickly dodged. After this blow, Artoria knelt on one knee, her right hand resting on the sword, panting heavily. Her face was pale, and beads of sweat covered her forehead, clearly from excessive magic power consumption. Did you run out of magic power? Altria looked up and saw Weiss beside her. Startled, she rolled away. Don't worry, I won't attack you. You have the protection of the distant utopia. I can't hurt you. Weiss didn't intend to waste his magic power. Chapter 231 Ethics. Artoria would never trust Weiss's words. In her mind, Weiss was a cunning and dangerous enemy, his every word a trap. Her resolute gaze betrayed vigilance and alertness, like the sharp edge of a sword, staring directly at Weiss. Summoning all her strength, she slowly rose to her feet. The process was arduous, her body weakened by the exhaustion of her magical power, and every movement required immense effort. Her legs trembled slightly, as if she could collapse again at any moment, but she gritted her teeth and stubbornly held herself up. Your magic power is exhausted. Your master isn't providing you with enough. Weiss's words echoed in the air, a hint of mockery in her voice. But Artoria remained undeterred. Her gaze remained firm, her heart filled with trust in Emiyakiritsugu. The strength of a servant is determined by the master's magical power. Artoria knew this well, and she also understood the predicament of her current situation. Without Alice's magical energy, she could not exert her full strength. Emiyakiritsugu, carrying Alice and his Omaya, emerged from the ruins. They appeared somewhat disheveled, their bodies covered in dust and blood. Emiyakiritsugu's eyes betrayed fatigue and worry. Seeing Artoria's weakened appearance, his heart tightened. Alice, quickly replenish Saber's magic power. Yes, Alice promised, but a strange glint flickered in her eyes. She cast her magic, and silver threads crisscrossed and interwoven, weaving together like a pair of wicker craftsmanship to create a glove. Her hand stabbed directly into Emiyakiritsugu's back. The strike was sudden and unexpected. Neither Emiyakiritsugu, his Omaya, nor Artoria had expected Alice to attack at this moment. Their eyes were filled with shock and confusion, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Alice's hand pierced Emiyakiritsugu's skin and entered his body. The movement was swift and decisive, piercing Emiyakiritsugu's heart without resistance. In this critical moment, Emiyakiritsugu displayed his calmness and decisiveness. Time alter, he accelerated his blood flow, the combustion of hemoglobin, and the movement of his muscles. Time slowed before his eyes, and everyone's movement seemed to be in slow motion. He threw himself forward with all his might, dodging the sneak attack. But a gaping wound still pierced his back, and blood flowed out. However, after using the inherent time control, the world would adjust for the time difference between inside and outside the barrier, placing a heavy strain on the body. Imaya Kiritsugu endured the pain, thinking to himself, Alice is being controlled. His heart was filled with worry and anger. After retrieving Alice, he examined her, but found nothing amiss. Eansburn's alchemical tools aren't omnipotent. Is it Castor's noble phantasm or his magic? In less than a second, Imaya Kiritsugu had already assessed the situation. This is all Castor's plan. He couldn't break through Saber's distant utopia, so he went straight for me, his master. He's been tricked. Bang, bang, bang. Hisamaya reacted quickly, pulling the trigger at Alice. A series of gunshots rang out, and bullets rained down on Alice. But all of them were stopped by the silver threads. Stop! Imaya Kiritsugu coughed up blood as he stopped Hisamaya. His voice was weak. She's just being controlled, he shouted, his eyes revealing his concern and love for Alice. What a loving couple, Weiss taunted. Does your wife know that your assistant is your lover? His words were filled with malice, deliberately provoking Kiritsugu's pain. Master, Artoria couldn't believe her ears. Her eyes were filled with shock and confusion, unable to believe that Kiritsugu had such a secret. So Kiritsugu, you've been deceiving me all along. Alice's voice was gentle, but with a hint of coldness. Then die now. The silver threads woven into a giant eagle swooped down towards Kiritsugu. The silver eagle was a Halmkreuzer crafted on site through alchemy, a weapon brought to life by Iris Veal. It emitted a high-pitched cry, like the slicing of a metal blade, soared like a bullet, its beak sharp as a razor. Bang! Imaya Kiritsugu drew his gun and fired, but the wound and pain in his back affected his aim. The bullet missed its target, missing the giant eagle. Saber attempted to rescue it, but was stopped by Weiss. Let the three of them resolve their emotional disputes among themselves. Despicable, Artoria cursed, her words thick with anger. But her curses were the same over and over again, lacking any new meaning, and Weiss was tired of hearing them. Weiss's spear, like a flash of lightning, repeatedly stabbed at Artoria. The spear carried a sharp momentum, streaking through the air with dazzling rays. Each thrust seemed to carry a tremendous force, a terrifying blow. Artoria struggled to block, her movements appearing laborious. Each impact of the spear sent a trembling tremor through her arms, as if they might collapse at any moment. Her face was pale, beads of sweat covering her forehead, but her eyes remained resolute and unyielding. Are you insulting me? Artoria glared at Weiss, her voice thick with anger and dissatisfaction. As the Night King, she held her dignity and honor, and would not tolerate insults or slights. Don't say that. I just wanted to practice my spearmanship. Weiss smiled faintly, his tone casual and easy, as if he didn't care about the battle at all. Though weakened, Artoria stubbornly resisted Weiss's attacks. The battle between the two reached a stalemate, a match made in heaven. Their figures constantly crossed on the battlefield, the clash of spears and holy swords echoing like a fierce battle melody. Meanwhile, her husband, his mistress, and his first wife engaged in a fierce battle. The battle between Kiritsugu Imaya, Hisamaya, and Alice was filled with tension and ferocity. Kiritsugu's eyes betrayed exhaustion and helplessness, for he had to contend with Alice's attacks while simultaneously protecting Hisamaya. Hisamaya's gaze was filled with determination and loyalty as she clung to Kiritsugu, offering him support and protection. Kiritsugu, you really like this girl. Countless silver threads shot up into the sky, weaving into birds of prey. Chapter 232 Ethics 2. Alice's magical power far surpasses that of ordinary mages, and each surge of it is like a surging wave. As a teammate, she is incredibly reassuring. In battle, her magic provides powerful support to her teammates, healing wounds, enhancing strength, and casting defensive magic with ease. However, as an enemy, she becomes a formidable opponent. Furthermore, both Imaya Kiritsugu and Hisamaya harbor guilt towards her. Their battle against Alice has always held them back from using force. Guilt has caused them to hesitate, preventing them from unleashing their full potential. Their wounds are mounting. Alice's attacks are constantly ravaging their bodies. Imaya Kiritsugu's body is covered in wounds, and blood is flowing continuously. Hisamaya is even more devastated. She is just an ordinary person, and she has only been able to hold out for so long thanks to Imaya Kiritsugu's help. Her body is exhausted, but she perseveres tenaciously, willing to sacrifice everything to protect Imaya Kiritsugu. Kiritsugu, you've never protected me like this before. Alice's eyes glistened with tears, threatening to fall. I'm so jealous. Her voice was filled with resentment and pain. She looked at Imaya Kiritsugu and his Omaya, a complex mix of emotions. She hoped Kiritsugu would protect her, yet she also felt jealous and resentful of his relationship with his Omaya. Alice, Kiritsugu said, his heart softening as he looked at Alice's face. He knew Alice was being controlled by Weiss, but he couldn't bring himself to strike her. Alice would show no mercy. A hint of coldness flashed in her eyes, and with a wave of her right hand, the birds of prey launched their attack. Like ferocious beasts, they pounced upon Kiritsugu and his Omaya. Their claws were razor-sharp, and their wings flapped with powerful wind. Under Alice's control, they attacked Kiritsugu and his Omaya without mercy, placing them in even greater danger. Alice slowly opened her arms, as if embracing the entire world. At that moment, countless silver threads appeared like silver snakes, dancing in the air, emitting an icy glow. With immense speed, they entwined themselves with Imaya Kiritsugu and his Omaya. Master, his Omaya warned loudly. Her eyes were fixed on the swiftly approaching threads, her weapon tightly gripped, ready to shield Imaya Kiritsugu from any attack. Imaya Kiritsugu sighed deeply as he watched the advancing threads. He knew he couldn't hesitate any longer. He quickly replaced the magazine with origin bullets, his eyes revealing a hint of determination. Alice, forgive me, he whispered, his voice filled with helplessness and guilt. Then, he activated his innate time control, and time seemed to slow down before his eyes. He fired 4 shots in quick succession, the sound of the gunshots resounding loudly in the silent air. The 4 origin bullets accurately struck Alice's limbs, the powerful impact causing her body to tremble slightly. Alice collapsed to the ground after being shot, a smile breaking across her face. Kiritsugu, you're so cruel, her voice filled with pain and resentment. She attempted to activate her healing magic, but the origin bullet disrupted Alice's magical energy, rendering her unable to cast her magic. A mysterious power emanated from the wound, preventing it from healing. Imaya Kiritsugu remained silent, his eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. He stared at Alice, slumped to the ground. Guilt and helplessness filling his heart. He knew his actions might leave Alice with no forgiveness, but he had no choice. Suddenly, Kiritsugu felt a chill in his spine, a powerful intuition warning him of approaching danger. He ignored his already severely injured body and activated his time control once again. In that instant, time seemed to stand still. He saw a golden spear from the shadow behind him, piercing his heart like lightning. In the nick of time, Kiritsugu used all his strength to deflect to the left. However, the spear's speed was too great, piercing half of his body. Blood gushed out like a fountain, the wound horrifying. One could even see the beating heart, a terrifying sight. Imaya Kiritsugu pressed his right hand tightly against the wound, trying to prevent the spillage of his internal organs. His face was as pale as paper, beads of sweat streaked his forehead, and his body trembled slightly with pain. Master, Imaya cried out in terror and desperation. She desperately rushed over, trying to support Imaya Kiritsugu. Imaya Kiritsugu was the most important person in her life. However, just as she was about to touch him, lightning, a bolt of lightning, like a ferocious dragon, instantly struck Imaya. Imaya had no time to dodge, and was instantly blasted into charcoal, emitting a pungent, burning smell. Imaya Kiritsugu's expression was impassive, his face expressionless, as if none of this mattered to him. Yet, only he knew his heart was bleeding. He was not a cold, heartless machine, he had feelings and felt pain. Imaya was one of his closest relatives, and her passing filled him with immense pain and remorse. Only those close to him could discern his pain from the subtle expressions in his expression, a subtle flicker of sadness in his eyes, a slight tremor at the corners of his mouth, his fingers clenched into fists. Alice could see it. Lying on the ground, she nudged her chin closer to Imaya Kiritsugu. Her movements were slow and labored, as if each one required immense effort. Her eyes were filled with love and pain, and she gazed at Imaya Kiritsugu, her heart swollen with mixed emotions. Kiritsugu, I really love you. Alice's voice was gentle and affectionate. Imaya Kiritsugu couldn't meet her eyes. Guilt and helplessness filled his heart, and he didn't know how to face Alice's feelings. He knew he had hurt her so much and was no longer worthy of her love. But you betrayed me, Emilia. Alice's voice was tinged with anger and disappointment. When she mentioned Ilya's name, Emilia Kiritsugu raised his head. Ilya was his daughter, and he felt a surge of guilt and remorse towards her. He knew he had sacrificed so much to achieve his ideals, including his own family and loved ones. "I'm sorry." Emilia Kiritsugu's voice was low and hoarse. He knew his apology couldn't make up for the mistakes he'd made, but he still wanted to say it, hoping to gain Alice's forgiveness. "Kiritsugu," Alice said, a smile on her face. "I won't forgive you." Silver threads woven into a giant eagle pounced on Emilia Kiritsugu with anger and hatred. Chapter 233 Exit. The giant eagle's talons, like razor-sharp blades, sliced through the air, threatening to crush Emilia Kiritsugu's head. At that crucial moment, a scabbard, like a blazing radiance, appeared before him. The scabbard exuded a mysterious aura, engraved with ancient runes, symbolizing Artoria's distant utopia. Artoria hurled the precious scabbard, shielding Emilia Kiritsugu from the fatal blow. However, Artoria herself was left defenseless. Now, Weiss, secretly delighted, teleported in front of Artoria. He held a spear, radiating a cold light, its tip pointed directly at Artoria's chest. "Caster." Artoria's eyes widened in fury, completely abandoning her defense. She concentrated all her magical power into the blade, and the holy sword instantly shone brightly. She was determined to sever Weiss's head, avenging herself and Emilia Kiritsugu. The holy sword, with unstoppable momentum, slashed off Weiss's head without resistance. However, before the head even touched the ground, it disintegrated into foam and vanished. "Doppelganger," Artoria cried inwardly. Her intuition told her Weiss was behind her, but it was too late. Weiss's spear, like a flash of lightning, pierced her body in an instant. Heroic spirits are not flesh and blood, but composed of magic. Weiss's spear possessed a powerful magic-breaking power, completely restraining Artoria. "You should know that faraway utopia can only block one blow. Emilia Kiritsugu will eventually die." Weiss looked at Artoria, her eyes devoid of pity. "As a knight, I will not let my master die before me." Artoria's eyes were firm, without a trace of fear. So-called chivalry code. Weiss frowned slightly. He didn't understand Artoria's actions, but he respected her choice. "Then goodbye, Saber." Weiss drew her spear, and Artoria's body shattered like shattered glass, dissolving into tiny specks of starlight and dissipating into the air. Elsewhere, after shielding Emilia Kiritsugu from a blow, distant utopia vanished with Artoria's retreat. Emilia Kiritsugu held Alice in his arms, and they lay quietly on the ground, gazing up at the starry sky. The stars were radiant and beautiful. "Kiritsugu," Alice's voice was gentle and affectionate. "Yes," Emilia Kiritsugu replied softly, his eyes filled with tenderness. "I love you." Alice's eyes glistened with tears, her voice filled with genuine emotion. "I know." Emilia Kiritsugu hugged Alice tightly. The effects of the origin bullet slowly dissipated, and Alice healed her limbs with healing magic. She sat up and embraced Emilia Kiritsugu. Their figures looked particularly warm under the starry sky, as if time had stood still at that moment. Swish, Weiss, expressionless, pierced both of their bodies with his spear. The spear's tip gleamed with an icy light, as if proclaiming the fragility and impermanence of life. Emilia Kiritsugu and Alice embraced each other tightly, their faces still etched with affection and love for each other. Yet, at this moment, their bodies were mercilessly pierced by the spear, blood gushing from the wounds, staining the ground beneath them red. Emilia Kiritsugu opened his mouth slightly, as if about to speak, but no sound came out. His eyes gradually lost their luster, the breath of life gradually fading. Alice clutched Emilia Kiritsugu's clothes tightly, as if clinging to a last shred of warmth. Tears streamed down her cheeks, dripping onto Emilia Kiritsugu's face. Thus ended their tragic lives. They had endured countless pain and suffering. They had fought for their beliefs, struggled for love, but ultimately, they could not escape the cruel irony of fate. Perhaps, dying together was their fortune. In this final moment, they were no longer alone, no longer in pain, they could walk together into eternal peace. The night wind rustled the leaves, as if sighing for their departure. The stars twinkled in the night sky, witnessing their love and tragedy. Thus, Saber, Caster, Assassin, and Berserker were successively defeated, withdrawing from the fierce and brutal Holy Grail War. Next, we must consider how to deal with Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, the proud and powerful hero king, was no match for Artoria. His strength lay not only in his unparalleled noble phantasm and magical power, but also in his arrogant personality and disdain for everything. He cared nothing for his master's life or death, acting solely on his own will, making him unpredictable. Weiss initially considered joining forces with Ryder. Ryder's heroic character and immense strength made Weiss feel he would be a good partner. However, he did not trust her. During the previous battle, Weiss's actions had made Ryder suspicious and wary of him. HMPH, you're untrustworthy, Ryder's words echoed in Weiss's mind, leaving him feeling helpless. As for Lancer, forget it, that unlucky guy with only E-luck. I'm afraid I'll be infected by his bad luck if I work with him. Weiss muttered to herself. While Lancer's strength was not to be underestimated, his tragic luck was truly lamentable. In battle, he kept getting inexplicably caught up in various predicaments, leaving one worried for him. After much deliberation, the only option left was to fight alone. Weiss sighed helplessly. He knew that facing a foe as powerful as Gilgamesh was undoubtedly extremely dangerous. But he had no other choice but to rely on his own strength to challenge the King of Heroes. The church's overseers collected the three bodies and erased any traces of battle. Their movements were swift and practiced, as if they had experienced this countless times. Their faces were expressionless as they silently carried out their duties. As the sun rose, the residents of Fuyuki City could only hear about the fire and the destruction of the old factory on the news. That's strange. Aren't there too many fires lately? One resident frowned, watching the news on TV. Why bother worrying about whether it burned down your house? Another resident said nonchalantly. That's true, the first resident nodded, and stopped thinking about it. Another ordinary day in Fuyuki City began. People bustled through the streets, going to work, school, and shopping, as if nothing had happened. However, beneath this seemingly calm surface, a more intense battle was about to begin. Chapter 234 Plan. Have the four heroic spirits already left? Gilgamesh gracefully held the red wine glass, twirling it gently between his slender fingers. The wine within shone brightly like a ruby. He narrowed his eyes slightly, a hint of curiosity and amusement in them. He gently swirled the glass, swirling the wine. The vibrant red liquid shimmered captivatingly under the light. Gilgamesh took a sip, savoring the rich taste and rich aroma that spread throughout his mouth. Yes, Katamin Kairi replied respectfully beside him. Castor is quite capable. Gilgamesh's lips curled slightly, a hint of appreciation on his face. His voice was filled with dominance and confidence, as if he knew everything. Katamin Kairi stood quietly by, his face expressionless, listening silently to Gilgamesh's words. What should we do next? Your will is your command? Ha ha ha, you're much more interesting than that Tasaka Tokiyami. Gilgamesh laughed, his laughter filled with dominance and grandeur. Let's make the clown more active. Gilgamesh's words were filled with teasing and amusement. I understand. Katamin Kairi bowed his head slightly and respectfully withdrew. Katamin Kairi's figure gradually disappeared into the darkness, leaving Gilgamesh standing alone, red wine glass in hand. In Fuyuki City's most luxurious hotel, the towering building seemed to reach into the sky, and the entire top floor was reserved by Kenneth L. Mallory Archibald, patriarch of the Archibald family, a 9-generation Magus family. Lancer stood tall before Kenneth and respectfully reported to him what had happened last night. His words were steady and powerful, recounting everything that had happened in detail. Last night's battle was extremely fierce. Saber and her master were killed by Castor. The situation has become even more complicated, and we must proceed with even greater caution, Lancer finished, quietly awaiting Kenneth's response. My strategy proved correct. Kenneth raised his chin slightly, a confident smile on his face. His white-gloved hands were elegantly folded in front of him, his golden hair meticulously coiffed. His demeanor was elegant yet tinged with a touch of formality, a quality bestowed upon him by long-standing family tradition and aristocratic upbringing. Behind Kenneth stood a red-haired beauty. She looked slightly younger than Kenneth, perhaps only about 20. Her flaming red hair shone brightly in the light, and her fair skin was as smooth as mutton-fat jade. She was Kenneth's fiancée, Solana Sophir, daughter of the Sophir family, a family that had served as deans of the Department of Necromancy. As she was not a legitimate child, she did not inherit the magic mark, but was raised as a political marriage. She participated in the Holy Grail War alongside Kenneth, providing magic power to his servant, Lancer. Sora's eyes were filled with love, a fiery passion that seemed to melt everything. Her hands gently cupped her heart, she gazed at the man before her with rapt attention. Yes, it was Lancer. In her eyes, Lancer was a god descended, his handsome features and towering figure radiating a captivating allure. Lancer's true identity was Diarmuid Odin, the glorious look, the chief warrior of the Irish Fianna, known in Celtic mythology as unparalleled. A teardrop mole beneath his eye was his distinctive mark. However, this magical mole possessed a special power. It captivated the opposite sex. Every woman who came face to face with him was overcome with a fierce love for him. If she possessed anti-magic power, she might have been able to avoid or resist him. However, Sora lacked such magical power and abilities, and she fell uncontrollably in love with Diarmuid, much to Kenneth's chagrin. He watched Sora's obsession, a rage raging within him. Although Diarmuid was fiercely loyal to him and kept his distance from Sora, Kenneth felt a certain injustice. This inexplicable sense of humiliation complicated his attitude toward Diarmuid. Their personalities were diametrically opposed. Lancer strictly adhered to the code of chivalry, even in battle with other servants. He respected his opponents, fought fairly, and never resorted to underhanded tactics. His master, Kenneth, on the other hand, would stop at nothing in his pursuit of victory. Kenneth cared only for the glory of victory and the honor of his family, employing every possible tactic and strategy. Lancer simply desired to be loyal to his master and fulfill his own wishes. He had no desire for the Holy Grail. He longed for the recognition of his lord and the fulfillment of his duty as a knight. However, Kenneth could not understand or believe this. He doubted Diarmuid's loyalty, believing he must have his own selfish motives. This conflict prevented the two from working together seamlessly, leaving them a chasm that seemed unbridgeable. Go down, Kenneth impatiently waved Lancer away. Master, Diarmuid paused, his eyes filled with helplessness and resentment. Back off, Kenneth's voice grew even more stern, leaving no room for questioning. Diarmuid retreated in frustration, his heart simmering with disappointment. He sensed Kenneth's lack of trust in him, and the feeling of being doubted pierced his heart. Is this my fate? He silently asked himself. He felt utterly lonely and helpless, a lone warrior in this world, unappreciated and untrusted. Weiss was well aware of the conflict between Lancer and his master, Kenneth. His familiarity with the plot had already thoroughly analyzed their various issues. After careful consideration, Weiss formulated a plan. However, as he conceived the initial outlines of it, a wave of doubt welled up within him. Isn't this too sinister? He felt like a villain, willing to do anything to achieve his goals. But the thought barely lingered for a second before he decisively abandoned it. In this brutal Holy Grail war, there's no absolute distinction between good and evil. Everyone strives for their own goals and fights to realize their own wishes. He couldn't let a momentary moral qualm sway him from the opportunity to change the situation. Besides, it saves effort this way, Weiss thought to himself, narrowing his eyes slightly. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the thin clouds, illuminating the streets and alleys of Fuyuki City. A gentle breeze, bringing a hint of coolness, awakened the city to a new day. Weiss, dressed in a black robe, appeared tall and straight in front of the luxurious hotel. He tilted his head slightly, gazing at the towering hotel building, a subtle cunning in his eyes. Chapter 235 No trace. I'm sorry, sir. The entire top floor has been reserved by a foreign noble. The front desk clerk bowed deeply to Weiss in apology, her face filled with apology. Her voice was soft and sincere, thick with regret. I'm truly sorry, sir. That nobleman reserved all the rooms on the top floor long ago, so we simply can't accommodate you there. As the clerk explained, she nervously observed Weiss's expression, fearing he might be upset. It's okay, Weiss replied with a smile as warm as the spring sunshine. I'm just here for a trip. His voice was calm and nonchalant, as if he didn't care that he couldn't stay on the top floor. He waved his hand slightly, indicating that the clerk didn't need to take it too seriously. I'm truly sorry, the clerk apologized again, quickly adjusting her attitude and recommending a room down the road. Sir, we have some very nice rooms down the road, with complete amenities in a comfortable environment. You might consider them. The clerk explained the rooms in detail, hoping to offer Weiss a satisfactory option. Weiss listened attentively to the clerk's explanation and then completed the check-in procedures. Throughout the formalities, he maintained an elegant demeanor and a gentle smile, creating a very welcoming impression. The Archibald family had no roots in Fuyuki City, and their selection by the Greater Holy Grail to participate in the Holy Grail War was unexpected. Their choice of the hotel and their lavish booking of the top floor was also intended to use ordinary people as shields. The Holy Grail War stipulated that ordinary people could not be involved on a large scale, but in the hotel, they could rely on the presence of ordinary people for protection. Weiss entered the elevator. A servant carried his luggage and stood respectfully beside him. Weiss, noting the servant's hard work, gave him a generous tip. The servant beamed and thanked Weiss repeatedly. "Thank you, sir. Have a pleasant trip." The servant's face was filled with joy. Weiss took the opportunity to ask him for information about Kenneth. "Do you know the noble who lives on the top floor?" The servant was slightly stunned, then shook his head. "Sir, I don't know much. I just know they're an engaged couple, very mysterious, and they've never left the top floor." The attendant tried to recall what he knew, hoping it would be helpful to Weiss. "They say they're here for a trip, but they haven't even left their room." "Really strange," the attendant muttered quietly, a puzzled look on his face. "Sure enough, I can't get any useful information," Weiss thought to himself. But he wasn't disappointed, because all this was within his expectations. From the beginning, he hadn't expected to easily obtain crucial information from the attendant. In fact, the entire hotel was under Kenneth's strict surveillance. To avoid being easily discovered, Wes deliberately altered his expression. Knowing Kenneth's cautiousness and cunning, he had made thorough preparations. As long as these ordinary people are here, no one else will dare launch a large-scale attack, Kenneth thought confidently as he sat in his luxurious room on the top floor. He was well aware of the rules of the Holy Grail War and knew that ordinary people couldn't be involved on a large scale. It was precisely with this in mind that he had chosen to rent out the top floor of the hotel, using the ordinary people as a potential protective barrier. He believed that the presence of these ordinary people would inevitably make other participants hesitant to launch a large-scale attack. As for breaking into the top floor, it was already riddled with traps. It had become Kenneth's home turf. Kenneth had meticulously laid out various magical traps and defensive measures, transforming the top floor into a fortress. He was confident in his own magical prowess, certain that in this home turf, he could defeat any opponent. A hint of pride and confidence lingered in his eyes, as if he had already envisioned the moment of his own victory in the Holy Grail War. Weiss walked steadily into his room, carefully examining every corner. The room was simply furnished yet comfortable, with soft lighting casting a warm glow over the neatly made bed. Weiss first checked the door's lock, ensuring it was secure. Then, he walked to the window and gently drew the curtains, checking for any abnormalities. Sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warm and bright. Weiss stood by the window, basking in the sunlight and savoring the moment's tranquility. This floor is only under surveillance. How confident. Kenneth's confidence, in Wes's view, was both a strength and a weakness. However, this situation did facilitate Wes, allowing him to implement his plan with greater ease. Wes walked to a corner of the room and turned on the TV. A drama was playing, featuring a scene of two men and a woman embroiled in a jealous rivalry. Wes's lips curled up slightly as he stared at the screen, his thoughts racing. Late into the night, all was silent. The moon, like a gigantic lamp, hung high in the sky. It was a full moon, its bright light pouring down, casting a silver veil over the earth. The full moon radiated a mysterious and captivating light. There's a saying that the moon goddess holds the power of reproduction, and so on full moon nights, creatures become more impulsive and lustful. Under this watery moonlight, an invisible force seemed to surge quietly, awakening the instincts deep within life. Humans are also animals. Despite the constraints of rationality and civilization, under the influence of the full moon, deepest emotions and desires are inevitably stirred. "What a beautiful day," Weiss whispered to herself, her voice remarkably clear in the silent room. Weiss held the mind staff in her hand. The mind stone atop it now shone with a faint blue light, as if answering Weiss's inner call. Weiss gently stroked the staff, feeling the powerful power contained within it. He sat cross-legged on the bed, leaning slightly forward, his breathing steady and rhythmic. "We can begin." The silence in the luxurious penthouse suite was suddenly broken. Sora jolted awake, her body trembling slightly, her eyes wide open, a hint of confusion and astonishment still lingering in them. Her face flushed like a ripe apple, its vibrant color striking in the moonlight. She gasped, her chest heaving violently, as if she had just been running. Chapter 236 Prelude. "It was just a dream," Sora whispered softly, her voice filled with surprise and regret. An indescribable sense of loss shone in her eyes. She slowly raised her hand and gently stroked her cheek, feeling the lingering warmth. Everything in the dream was so real that she couldn't distinguish reality from illusion. She sat quietly on her bed, the scenes from the dream replaying in her mind. Thinking of Diarmuid, a warm feeling welled up in her heart. In the dream, Diarmuid was so gentle, his eyes filled with love and compassion, as if she were the only being in his world. His smile, as warm as the sun, dispelled the gloom from her heart. His strength gave her a sense of peace, as if, as long as he was by her side, she had nothing to fear. Sora lost herself in the memories, her lips curled up slightly, revealing a happy smile. And he actually, Sora's voice trembled slightly, and she paused mid-sentence, thinking back to the unspeakable dream. She felt her body growing hotter, as if a fire was burning within her. This unfamiliar feeling unsettled her. She hurriedly rose from the bed, her steps unsteadily treading towards the refrigerator. Opening the door, a gust of cool air washed over her, bringing her back to consciousness. She pulled out a bottle of ice water, its surface radiating a subtle coolness. She eagerly unscrewed the cap. Gudong, gudong, she downed the entire bottle in one gulp. The cool water flowed down her throat, soothing the heat in her body, but her heart remained restless. Her aristocratic upbringing had forbidden such crude behavior. She had always been taught to be elegant and proper, every movement conforming to the norms of nobility. However, at this moment, she had no regard for such things. The images from her dream kept replaying in her mind, the vivid, blushing, and heart-pounding scenes that she couldn't shake. The dream had been too real. After downing the bottle of ice water, Sora finally calmed down a bit. She slowly sat down on the edge of the bed, a look of confusion in her eyes. He's a heroic spirit. After the Holy Grail War, he'll return to Chaldea. I'm just a castaway from my family. We'll never meet again, Sora silently counseled herself. She knew that Diarmuid and she came from different worlds, the gap between them as vast as heaven and earth. She couldn't harbor unrealistic fantasies about a heroic spirit, she had to face reality. And Kenneth's strength and status were both exceptional, Sora reminded herself again. Kenneth was her fiancé, possessing powerful magical abilities and a lofty position. She should cherish the man before her, not indulge in unrealistic fantasies. Despite this, under the influence of Diarmuid's black mole, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Especially after such a beautiful dream, her heart was filled with conflict and struggle. She didn't know how to deal with her feelings. She felt as if she were trapped in an inescapable vortex, sinking deeper and deeper. Sora frantically covered herself with a quilt, as if that would banish Diarmuid from her mind. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to calm her thoughts, forcing herself to stop thinking about Diarmuid. However, the more she tried, the clearer Diarmuid became in her mind. His gentle smile, his strong figure, recurred in her mind like a spell, lingering. She seemed to hear Diarmuid's invitations, his voice magnetic, her heart racing. For a moment, she couldn't tell whether it was fantasy or reality. She moaned muffledly beneath the covers, her body drenched in sweat. She felt as if she were trapped in a quagmire, unable to escape. The more she struggled, the deeper she sank. No, I can't think about this anymore. Sora flung the covers aside and jumped out of bed. Her eyes were filled with determination. She knew she couldn't continue sinking like this. She went to the bathroom and turned on the cold water. The moment it touched her, she shuddered, her breathing becoming a little labored. But she gritted her teeth and persevered. After taking a few deep breaths to regulate her breathing, she let the cold water wash over her body. The chill it brought to her skin was a chill that eased her restless heat. She stood quietly under the shower, letting the cold water wash over her body and soul. After 10 minutes of cold water, she finally calmed down. Her eyes became clear, and her mind was clear of all distracting thoughts. However, she was no longer sleepy. She stood quietly in the bathroom, her gaze fixed on her reflection in the mirror. Her figure was curvaceous, her curves were exquisite, her graceful form seemed a masterpiece meticulously crafted by nature. Add to that a remarkable face, fair skin, delicate features, slightly rosy cheeks, and long, flowing hair, and every inch of her radiated captivating charm. Why doesn't that idiot appreciate it? Sora muttered softly, a hint of anger and disappointment in her tone. She gently caressed her body, her fingers sliding across her delicate skin, feeling its warmth and softness. The image of Diarmuid resurfaced in her mind, his handsome face, gentle eyes, and strong figure. Her heart beat faster. Stop, Sora fought to control her thoughts, knowing she couldn't let herself sink into despair any longer. She took a deep breath, left the bathroom, and returned to bed. But sleep was refusing. She lay in bed, tossing and turning, filled with restlessness and anxiety. Desperate, she went to the window and looked out at the nightscape. The city lights shone brilliantly, dazzling like a dreamy ocean. Come to think of it, I've never been out for a walk before, a longing welled up in Sora's heart. She longed to leave this room, to experience the outside world, to breathe the free air. But remembering her father and Kenneth's instructions, she dismissed the thought. They had warned her that during the Holy Grail War, the outside world was fraught with danger and that she couldn't easily leave the hotel. Let's just wander around this floor, Sora decided. She put on her underwear, put on a simple coat, and walked out of her room. Perhaps she was also looking forward to a chance encounter with Diarmuid. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237 Triangle. The entire top floor was deserted. Sora's steps unconsciously grew lighter, as if each step was tinged with anticipation. Her eyes darted around, hoping to spot that familiar figure in some corner. Her heartbeat quickened slightly, and an inexplicable sense of nervousness washed over her. She didn't know what she was hoping for, nor what she would say if she actually met that person. But this anticipation, like a seed in spring, took root and sprouted within her, making her irresistible. As Sora walked, she imagined the scene of meeting that person. She imagined his smile, his eyes, his voice. These images brought a faint blush to her face, and a warmth filled her heart. She knew this anticipation was probably just an illusion, but she couldn't control her feelings. The corridor on this floor was softly lit. Sora's figure was particularly striking in the light, her beauty seeming to blend into the night. As she continued walking, her anticipation grew stronger, as if an invisible force was pulling her forward. Please return to your room, Diarmuid's voice suddenly rang out, remarkably clear in the silent corridor. His sudden, ghostly appearance startled Sora. She shuddered slightly, instinctively taking a step back. However, when she saw it was Diarmuid, a brilliant smile spread across her face. It's you. The moment she saw Diarmuid, Sora forgot everything. Her eyes were fixed on him, her heart filled with joy and excitement. All her worries vanished in that moment. Diarmuid observed Sora's reaction and sighed helplessly. What a nuisance, he muttered to himself. He felt nothing for Sora. In his eyes, she was simply the fiancée of his master, Kenneth. His duty was to protect her, not to become emotionally entangled with her. He knew Kenneth was deeply infuriated by this matter, so he had deliberately kept his distance from Sora to avoid causing unnecessary trouble. However, he also understood his duty to protect Sora. Regardless of his feelings for her, he had to fulfill his responsibility to ensure her safety. His gaze hardened. He looked at Sora and said sternly, Miss Sora, please return to your room immediately. It's dangerous here. You shouldn't be wandering around outside. She's showing concern for me. How manly of her. In Sora's eyes, everything Diarmuid did was cast through a beautiful lens. You're showing concern for me. Sora fiddled with her hair, a hint of shyness in her eyes. Her cheeks flushed slightly, like a blooming flower, radiating a captivating glow. She was filled with anticipation, hoping for a positive response from Diarmuid. Please return to your room. Diarmuid's voice was stiff, his eyes expressionless. He didn't want Sora to misunderstand him, nor did he want to cause himself unnecessary trouble. His duty was to protect Sora's safety, not to become emotionally entangled with her, so cold-blooded. I love that. Sora secretly admired him. While Sora was still infatuated with him, Diarmuid didn't want to linger with her and turned away. Wait, Sora reached out to grab Diarmuid's arm. Her movements were somewhat anxious, hoping that Diarmuid would stay with her for a moment. However, Diarmuid jerked his arm back. His movement was abrupt, not considering Sora's feelings. As a result, Sora lost her balance and fell to the ground. Ouch! Sora cried out in a voice filled with panic and pain. Her body hit the ground hard, and a sharp pain shot through her knee, causing her to wince. Are you okay? Diarmuid asked hurriedly. Seeing Sora's pained expression, he felt a surge of guilt. He knew his actions had been rash, but he hadn't anticipated the consequences. My knee is broken, and I can't stand up, Sora looked at Diarmuid expectantly, her eyes filled with plea and longing. "I'll go find the master," Diarmuid said after a moment's hesitation. He knew his current situation was awkward. If Kenneth saw him with Sora, it would surely cause unnecessary trouble. "No," Sora said, "you don't want Kenneth to misunderstand you, do you?" Sora's voice was thick with worry and fear. She knew Kenneth's temper. If he saw her with Diarmuid, he'd be furious. She didn't want Diarmuid to be implicated because of her. Diarmuid paused, his mind swirling with conflict and confusion. "Just help me get back. It won't take long," Sora offered his right hand. Diarmuid had no choice but to help him up, his movements gentle, afraid to hurt Sora. As luck would have it, Sora's coat slipped off at that moment, leaving only her underwear covering her most vulnerable parts. Neither of them knew how to react. Their eyes were filled with surprise and embarrassment, their bodies involuntarily stiffening. "What are you two doing?" Kenneth appeared, his voice filled with anger and shock. His eyes were filled with rage. If looks could kill, they would have been dead several times over. Veins bulged in his forehead, and his fists were clenched tightly, ready to explode. "Master, this is all a misunderstanding," Diarmuid explained hastily. Sora quickly put on her coat. "Kenneth, this is indeed a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding." Kenneth's voice was filled with anger and questioning. He felt his intelligence had been severely insulted by these two. His eyes gleamed with rage, as if he wanted to burn the two men to ashes. "It's 3 a.m., why are you dressed like this instead of staying in your room?" Kenneth demanded loudly, his voice resonating oppressively in the silent hallway. His gaze fixed on Sora, awaiting her response. Sora's heart was in a state of panic. She couldn't bring herself to say she'd come out to get some fresh air because she'd had a lustful dream and couldn't sleep. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes filled with embarrassment and anxiety. Unsure how to respond to Kenneth's questioning, she could only lower her head, biting her lips silently. This look was a confession to Kenneth, and his expression darkened even further. Kenneth stared at Sora, his gaze as sharp as a knife. Chapter 238, Killing Each Other. His chest heaved violently, clearly straining to suppress his rage. Kenneth couldn't believe his fiancée was wearing such inappropriate clothing with his servant at 3 in the morning. The scene filled him with immense humiliation and anger, a profound challenge to his dignity. Kenneth gritted his teeth, clenching his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white from the strain. Speculations and suspicions raced through his mind. He didn't know what had transpired between Sora and Diarmuid, but one thing he knew for sure was that this matter couldn't be let go so easily. "Do you still have eyes for me?" Kenneth demanded angrily. "Master, this is all a misunderstanding," Diarmuid hurriedly explained, his voice tinged with nervousness and uneasiness. He lowered his head slightly, not daring to meet Kenneth's gaze, a surge of guilt filling his heart. He knew his current predicament was awkward, and he understood Kenneth's anger, but he hadn't done anything out of line. "Shut up, I have eyes," Kenneth shouted, interrupting Diarmuid's explanation. His face was terribly gloomy, and the veins on his forehead bulged, revealing the utter fury within him. He glared at Diarmuid fiercely. "I don't want to hear a single word of your explanation." At that moment, Sora, for some unknown reason, suddenly stood in front of Diarmuid. Her gaze was firm, a hint of stubbornness on her face. "You are not allowed to say that about him," Sora declared loudly, her voice thick with protectiveness. Her action stunned both Kenneth and Diarmuid. They hadn't expected Sora to react like this at this moment. Kenneth laughed angrily, his laughter filled with mockery and anger. He looked at Sora, his eyes filled with disappointment. He couldn't believe that his fiancée would actually go against him for a servant. A deep sense of defeat welled up in him. He felt that his position in Sora's heart was even less than that of a servant. Kenneth's eyes were red, his face contorted with rage. In that moment, it was as if all reason had vanished from him, only an endless rage burning within him. "Pa!" A crisp slap echoed in the corridor. Kenneth slapped Sora's face with such force that her head jerked sideways. Her cheek instantly flushed and swelled, the searing pain making it almost impossible to believe what was happening. "Get out of here," Kenneth shouted, his voice filled with disgust and rage. He stared at Sora without a trace of pity. He felt that Sora had betrayed him, a profound insult to his dignity. Sora was stunned by the slap. "How dare he hit me?" She was filled with shock and indignation. She couldn't believe that the usually gentle Kenneth would actually lay a hand on her. The indignation in her heart instantly turned to rage, and her mind began to slip. She clutched Diarmuid's arm tightly. "Let's go, get away from this jealous man," Sora shouted, her voice filled with anger and determination. Diarmuid was stunned. Is this woman crazy? This is the Holy Grail War. Does she know what she's doing? Diarmuid was filled with confusion and shock. He hadn't expected Sora to make such an impulsive decision at this moment. As expected, there's an affair going on between you two, Kenneth said through gritted teeth. He pulled out a test tube and poured out the silvery white liquid inside. It was Kenneth's strongest trump card, and also his favorite ceremonial item. It combined defense, attack, and enemy detection using magically transformed mercury. Normally contained in a test tube enchanted with a weight-reducing technique, under his control, the silvery white liquid instantly transformed into a sharp spear, piercing Sora. Dang! With a loud bang, Diarmuid's spear blocked Kenneth's attack in time. Master, calm down. This isn't going on, Diarmuid shouted anxiously, his brow furrowed, his eyes filled with alarm and confusion. He was acutely aware of the strange atmosphere around him, and an indescribable unease spread within him. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pinpoint the exact cause of the problem. The worst offenders are you, the adulterous couple, Kenneth roared furiously, his voice thick with rage. He compressed mercury into blades a few microns thick. Under the high pressure, these blades slashed at the two with astonishing speed. Kenneth had completely lost his mind at this moment. He regarded Diarmuid and Sora as sworn enemies, filled with endless rage and hatred. Diarmuid stepped before Sora without hesitation, shouting, Master, stop. However, Kenneth's attacks only grew more ferocious. The moon spirit marrow instantly transformed into long whips, sending countless lashes lashing out like a torrential rain. The surrounding walls and corridors were vulnerable to the powerful attack, shattered, sending debris flying everywhere. In desperation, Diarmuid picked up Sora and swiftly dodged the attack. His agility was as swift as a cheetah, darting between the whips without sustaining a single scratch. His movements were decisive and swift, each one perfectly timed, displaying the exceptional qualities of a skilled warrior. You truly love me, otherwise you wouldn't risk your life to protect me. Sora, in this tense moment, was practically infatuated. Her eyes shone with joy and emotion, as if the danger around them had vanished. She stared intently at Diarmuid, her heart brimming with love. Diarmuid was certain they had both been smitten. Indeed, under the influence of the black mole, Sora had uncontrollably fallen in love with him. However, her upbringing had always taught her to exercise restraint, never allowing her to utter such explicit words. Kenneth had also always remained calm. Today's events were too much of a coincidence. So much so that it felt like a cliched, melodramatic love triangle plot by some third-rate screenwriter. But where is the enemy? What methods are they using? Diarmuid was filled with confusion and worry. In direct combat, Lancer feared no one, but facing this mind control technique, he was helpless. Asshole, if you've got what it takes, fight me in a fair fight, Diarmuid roared in anger. He longed to find his enemy and confront him. He knew the enemy must be nearby, but he couldn't pinpoint their exact location. This unknown enemy made him feel extremely anxious and uneasy. Downstairs, Weiss smiled and said, It's too late to realize it now. Chapter 239 Loyalty. Kenneth's attacks grew increasingly ferocious, his mercury-made blades and whips raining down like a torrential downpour, the entire space enveloped in his fury. His sanity gradually faded in this endless fury, completely forgetting his purpose in coming to Fuyuki City. At that moment, he had only one mad thought, to kill the couple who, in his view, had betrayed him. Master, think about your goal. This is the Holy Grail War, Diarmuid shouted urgently, his voice filled with anxiety and worry. He knew only too well how dangerous it was to lose your mind in such a war. They must remain calm to have any chance of victory. Holy Grail War. Kenneth's attacks suddenly stopped, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. As if brought back to reality by Diarmuid's words, he began to reconsider his actions. That's right, Diarmuid, as if grasping at a lifeline, quickly continued, this is all an enemy conspiracy. We must not fall into their trap. We must unite, fight together against the enemy, and fight for the Holy Grail. Kenneth gazed at the command seals on his hand, the mysterious lines of which seemed to remind him of his mission. You are my servant, Kenneth said slowly. That's right, Diarmuid was overjoyed. As long as we join forces, the Holy Grail will surely be yours. His eyes were filled with anticipation, hoping that Kenneth would truly calm down and reassess the current situation. I was so stupid. I didn't even see through such a simple question, Kenneth said, smoothing his hair. A hint of regret crossed his face, as if he was ashamed of his previous gaffe. I really lost my composure just now. Diarmuid breathed a sigh of relief, secretly celebrating. Great. Master has finally calmed down, he thought silently, feeling relieved that he had successfully persuaded Kenneth. However, just when Diarmuid thought the crisis was over, Kenneth's expression suddenly twisted. Then I command you, Lancer. Kenneth's voice was filled with cold determination. Kill Solana Zelasafiri. Diarmuid's mind went blank. He had never expected Kenneth to give such an order. He stared at Kenneth with wide eyes, wondering if he had misheard. In the moment Diarmuid was stunned, Kenneth unhesitatingly activated the command seal, Kill Solana Zelasafiri. As the command seal was activated, Diarmuid's body moved involuntarily. His right hand tightly gripped the spear, the sharp tip slowly raised, aiming at Sora. Master, stop, Diarmuid cried out in terror, his voice filled with pleading. He strained to resist the force of the command seal with all his might, veins bulging on his forehead, sweat pouring down. Pain and struggle filled his eyes. He refused to carry out this insane order, knowing that if he launched the strike, the consequences would be irreversible. Go, Diarmuid forced the words out through gritted teeth, his gaze fixed on Sora. He wanted Sora to escape quickly, he didn't want her to become a victim of the command seals. He knew that when Kenneth regained his composure, he would regret his actions. But now, he had to find a way to stop his body, to prevent this tragedy from happening. You actually broke the command seals for her? Do you really have no feelings for her at all? Kenneth demanded. Tears welled up in Sora's eyes like a flood. She couldn't believe Diarmuid would break the command seals for her. In her mind, command seals were absolute orders for a servant, unbreakable. Yet, Diarmuid did it. And it filled her with an indescribable emotion. Diarmuid felt like mud had fallen into his pants, unable to speak. He had no romantic feelings for Sora, his resistance was simply out of respect for innocent life, his dignity as a knight, and his loyalty to his lord. I command you, kill her, Kenneth roared again, furious. This action shattered Diarmuid's last remaining hope. He was no match for the immense power of the three command seals. Diarmuid was filled with despair and sorrow. He recalled his past life, misunderstood by his lord and ultimately his own death. After becoming a heroic spirit, he had hoped to find a worthy lord in the Holy Grail War and fulfill the duty he had failed to fulfill in his past life. However, he did not earn Kenneth's trust. He harbored a deep regret, a sense of guilt for his past life's failure to serve his lord. Participating in the Holy Grail War was his sole obsession. He hoped to fulfill his unfulfilled duty as a knight, serving a lord to the bitter end. However, this simple wish was shattered at that moment. What a failure, both as a human and a heroic spirit. Diarmuid sighed silently inwardly. He felt his life was filled with helplessness and sorrow. Whether as a human or a heroic spirit, he had failed to realize his ideals. Master, this is the last thing I can do for you. Diarmuid pondered silently, his eyes filled with helplessness and resoluteness. He knew he could no longer disobey the command seal and harm Sora, nor could he continue his loyalty to Kenneth. Faced with this dilemma, he made a tragic decision. Swish, with a dull sound, blood spurted out instantly. The crimson liquid splashed through the air like a blooming flower, poignant and despairing. Sora and Kenneth stared wide-eyed, stunned by the scene before them. They couldn't believe Diarmuid would resort to such a gruesome method. Diarmuid's body trembled slightly, a trace of pain on his face. But his eyes remained firm, without a trace of regret. He looked at Kenneth and, with his last remaining strength, said, Master, beware of the enemy. With these final words, Diarmuid slowly closed his eyes. His body began to fade, transforming into countless points of light that gradually dissipated into the air. Those points of light, like brilliant stars, illuminated the dark corridor, but also took away a brave knight. Sora and Kenneth stood there in shock, their hearts filled with shock and grief. They stared at the place where Diarmuid had disappeared, speechless for a long time. Chapter 240 Thoughts. A massive mental shock, like a surging wave, crashed through the two men's minds, instantly breaking them from their lost state. Reason, like a tenacious defender, reclaimed the high ground. Clear thinking, like a beacon suddenly lit in the darkness, illuminated their chaotic thoughts one by one. What's wrong with me? Kenneth muttered to himself, his voice filled with deep confusion and bewilderment. He stared blankly at his trembling hands, the trembling an outward manifestation of inner fear and regret. His eyes were empty and lifeless, unable to believe what he had just done. What have I done? He asked himself painfully, his voice filled with endless self-blame and regret. Without the influence of the black mole, Sora no longer felt the same unbreakable attachment to Diarmuid. She clutched her forehead tightly, as if trying to clear her mind. A hint of alarm crossed her eyes as she struggled to process what had just happened. The enemy has broken in. Her voice, though quiet, was filled with nervousness and anxiety. Where is he? Kenneth asked eagerly, his eyes filled with anxiety and worry. I don't know. The enemy's methods are very subtle. They're probably using some kind of mental attack, Sora analyzed calmly, her brow furrowed, her eyes filled with thought. She tried to recall every detail, trying to find the enemy's whereabouts. Bring him out, Kenneth said decisively. He decided to seal off the entire hotel, denying the enemy a chance to escape. He quickly considered various countermeasures and prepared to launch a comprehensive search. However, it was too late. The moment Diarmuid committed suicide, Weiss had quietly left the hotel. Without even seeing Weiss, the two were manipulated by him. As a teenager, no matter what problem he faced, no one could solve it more perfectly than him. His efforts were not driven by any particular purpose, but simply by the belief that his research would, at some point, surpass others. His talent was like a brilliant star, shining brightly in every field. He always easily identified the key to a problem and solved it with ingenious means. In his world, no problem seemed insurmountable. He worked at the clock tower, rising to the top of a vast and remarkable body of research, his name a legend, reverberating throughout the halls of academia. He had always been the envy and jealousy of others, yet he felt no sense of satisfaction or accomplishment. To him, it was simply the inevitable outcome of life. He believed his talent and hard work deserved this reward, so he felt neither pride nor arrogance, simply accepting the title of genius as a matter of course. Back then, in his world, he was the master of everything. Nothing could stop him from moving forward, no obstacles, no worries about his limits. A gifted heir, the heir of a prestigious family, he inherited not only the legacy of magical achievements passed down through generations, but also possessed a rare talent to match. His academic career soared, seemingly unstoppable, as if nothing could thwart his brilliance. However, now he was in deep trouble. Weiss shattered his perfect world, leaving him feeling an unprecedented sense of defeat. I won't accept this outcome. His voice was filled with anger and resentment. Kenneth clenched his fists tightly, vowing to find his enemy and make him pay for his actions. Kenneth, Sora's voice softly echoed, slowly embracing him from behind. Her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, as if offering him strength and comfort. Kenneth froze, his body stiffening in that moment. He had never expected Sora to act like this, and a complex wave of emotions welled up within him. You've disqualified yourself, haven't you? Sora's voice echoed again, her tone tinged with resignation and sadness. She looked at Kenneth, her eyes filled with concern. Kenneth slowly lowered his head and glanced at his hands. The 3 command seals were now gone. Regret filled his heart, knowing he had lost his place in the Holy Grail War. Lancer has retired. Sora's voice was filled with regret. She thought of Diarmuid, that brave knight. Feelings of regret and unwillingness, unprecedented before, suddenly surged through Kenneth's heart. He couldn't accept his own failure. He had always been so confident and proud, never having imagined such an outcome. Is this what failure feels like? Kenneth silently asked himself. He was filled with confusion and bewilderment. He had never experienced failure before, and this feeling filled him with immense pain and loss. He didn't know how to face this outcome, nor did he know what path to take in the future. Wes walked calmly back to the lab, gently toying with a mysterious scepter in his hands. The lab lights were dim and quiet, illuminating his pensive face. The results of the experiment on Kenneth and the others filled Wes with satisfaction, and the corners of his mouth curled up in a subtle smile. His gaze once again focused on the Mind Stone atop the scepter, pondering his progress. Currently, he had developed less than 10% of the Mind Stone, yet the power displayed by this undeveloped stone was already immense. The dazzling light seemed to hold endless mysteries, captivating and awe-inspiring. A bold thought quietly emerged in Wes's mind. What would happen if all 6 Infinity Stones were gathered? Once the thought took hold, it grew wildly in his mind like weeds. He imagined the scene when all 6 Infinity Stones came together. What kind of devastating power would that be? What kind of transformation and impact would it bring? Calm down, Wes warned himself. He suppressed this wild thought, trying to regain his composure. He knew that while the power of the Infinity Stones was immense, it also came with significant risks. Assembling all 6 Infinity Stones would be no easy task, and there was more than just the purple potato spirit Thanos eyeing them. A mysterious and terrifying presence emerged in Wes's mind: death. He knew that death was constantly watching the 6 Infinity Stones, and any attempt to gather them would inevitably attract death's attention. And antagonizing death was undoubtedly an extremely dangerous venture. Weiss knew that he had to be careful and not let the power of the Infinity Stones get to his head. Chapter 241 Gathering. Teacher, has he really returned? Waver looked up at the plane flying overhead, its silver fuselage leaving a long trail in the blue sky. His eyes were filled with doubt and uncertainty, and his voice trembled slightly. Of course, I'm not mistaken. Iskander crossed his arms, his eyes firm and confident. His towering figure, like an unshakable mountain, evoked a strong sense of security. Lancer has been defeated, he said with absolute certainty. Is that so? Waver had not expected Kenneth to fail. In the clock tower, Kenneth was a star figure. His talent and strength were highly regarded, and he had always been admired by everyone. Waver fell into deep thought, feeling uneasy about the cruelty and uncertainty of this Holy Grail war. Can I really survive this war? A strong regret suddenly surged in Waver's heart. He began to doubt whether his decision to participate in this war, filled with danger and uncertainty, was the right one. Don't worry, Iskander extended his large hand and patted Waver's shoulder firmly. That powerful hand seemed to convey boundless strength, sending a surge of warmth through Waver's heart. Victory will surely be ours, Iskander's voice boomed and resolute, brimming with confidence and dominance. Ryder, Waver's eyes welled with tears. He gazed at Iskander, his heart filled with gratitude and admiration. Summoned as Ryder, Iskander was a formidable heroic spirit. His bravery, wisdom, and leadership deeply impressed Waver. What a wonderful pair, Weiss's voice echoed without warning. He appeared before them, as if stepping out of thin air. Iskander's reaction was almost instantaneous, his towering frame like a solid barrier, quickly blocking Waver behind him. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, fixed Weiss intently, his muscles tensed. Weiss, having eliminated several heroic spirits in a row, had fully demonstrated his formidable strength. Iskander knew that facing such a formidable opponent, he could not afford to be complacent. Every subtle movement, every shift in aura, held a potentially deadly danger. Are you going to fight here? Iskander's voice was deep and powerful. His gaze was fixed on Weiss. This was a bustling airport, a throng of people, a cacophony of noise. A fight here would have disastrous consequences. It could cause immense chaos, and countless innocent lives would be endangered. Of course not. Weiss shook his head gently, his movements graceful and composed, his smile as warm as a spring breeze. Would you like to have a drink? His tone was casual, as if you were inviting an old friend. Iskander narrowed his eyes slightly, his hand unconsciously stroking his beard. He fell into a brief moment of contemplation, his mind rapidly weighing various possibilities. He wanted to see what Weiss was trying to hide, what this mysterious opponent's motives were. But at the same time, he knew it could be a trap. Yet, his heroic character and fearless courage ultimately led him to his decision. Yes, a shrine in Fuyuki City had long been abandoned due to years of neglect. Overgrown with weeds, the withered blade swaying gently in the breeze spoke of the passage of time. The dilapidated buildings and crumbling walls exuded a sense of desolation forgotten by time. Weiss stood amidst this desolate landscape, gently waving his sleeves, and powerful magic surged forth like a surging tide. Instantly, the tangled weeds were cleared, revealing a smooth, open space. Then, with a slight movement of his fingers, as if plucking invisible strings, tables, chairs, and benches appeared as if by magic. Magic is truly convenient, Iskander exclaimed, observing the scene before him. He sat down with the air of a king, his majestic demeanor like a king on his throne. His body relaxed, yet his eyes remained vigilant, unfazed by any fear of traps. He believed he possessed the courage and strength to face any situation. Waver's courage had also grown considerably, no longer as fearful as before. Standing behind Iskander, he was filled with curiosity, constantly eyeing Weiss, his mind brimming with questions. He didn't know why Weiss had invited them, nor did he know what would happen next. But beside Iskander, he felt an inexplicable sense of security, which brought a slight sense of peace. As expected of the king of conquerors, Weiss' voice was filled with sincere praise. His gaze lingered on Iskander for a moment. To be able to persuade a master like Waver to willingly yield the initiative and obey through the sheer force of his personality is something not many people can achieve, Weiss continued, his tone tinged with admiration for Iskander. Indeed, in the Holy Grail War, the relationship between servant and master was often complex and delicate, but Iskander's unique ability to convince young Waver to willingly follow his instructions with his unique charisma was undoubtedly a remarkable skill. Perhaps because Waver was still young and inexperienced, he couldn't suppress Iskander. Weiss nodded slightly, analyzing thoughtfully. Waver's youth and inexperience made it difficult for him to dominate the powerful and charismatic Iskander. Iskander, on the other hand, relied on his wisdom, courage, and kingly demeanor to easily control the situation. Iskander simply smiled, saying nothing. His smile was filled with confidence and composure, as if he didn't care about Weiss's assessment. He believed his actions were simply natural, not a deliberate attempt to conquer or control others. Weiss filled 3 glasses with fine wine. The wine was golden, shimmering in the sunlight like a brilliant gem. The aroma of the wine filled the air, bringing a sense of peace and tranquility. "Excellent wine," Iskander exclaimed. As a tyrant who had conquered most of Europe, he had tasted every fine wine in the world. However, wine of this caliber was rare. HMPH, a sudden flash of dazzling golden light passed by. Amidst this radiance, Jin Shanshan suddenly appeared, like a descending god. He stood tall and proud in the air, looking down upon the 3 with condescending disdain. His eyes were filled with arrogance and contempt. In his eyes, the 3 were mere insignificant dents. His aura was so powerful and oppressive that it froze the air around him. Chapter 242 Drinking Together as a Trio. "Would you like a drink? There are only 3 of us left in the Holy Grail War," Weiss invited with a smile. His voice was steady and calm, his lips slightly raised with a hint of composure, his eyes clear and resolute. He gently spread his hands out in an invitation. "Tisk," Gilgamesh snorted disdainfully. His proud figure slowly descended from the air, golden light shimmering around him like brilliant stars. His steps were light and graceful, each one imbued with an unparalleled majesty. He raised his chin slightly, his eyes filled with arrogance and contempt. Weiss conjured an ornate chair. Wine. The wine glass was exquisite, the golden liquid rippled gently within, emitting a captivating luster, like a precious work of art. Looking at the golden liquid, Gilgamesh raised an eyebrow, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. "What kind of wine is this?" His voice was questioning, his tone arrogant and cold. "I don't know what it's called, but it's a 3,000-year-old fine wine brewed by the Asgardians for the god King Odin," Weiss replied calmly, his eyes devoid of any fear, unconcerned by Glint's questioning. "God King?" Glint's expression instantly darkened, his eyes narrowing slightly, a golden light flickering in them. "A 3,000-year-old fine wine. I must savor it." Iskander, on the other hand, appeared quite generous. He lifted the glass and downed it without hesitation. The golden liquid flowed down his throat like silky satin, leaving a refreshing and mellow sensation. A variety of fruity aromas instantly enveloped his mouth, as if transported to a beautiful orchard. The sweet aroma of apples, the fragrance of grapes, and the freshness of oranges blended together, intoxicating. Once it entered his stomach, the aftertaste was immense. A surge of heat rushed directly to his forehead, causing Iskander's face to flush. His eyes narrowed slightly, taking in the strong influence of the alcohol. He exhaled, and it wasn't a stench of alcohol, but rather a charming floral fragrance. The scent was fresh and elegant, like spring blossoms swaying gently in the breeze. "Excellent wine," Iskander exclaimed, his eyes filled with satisfaction and enjoyment. "You country bumpkin, you've never seen the world." Jin Shanshan raised his chin slightly, his air of pride as if he were the master of the world, and everyone else were mere ants. He took a sip of the wine, his gesture graceful yet tinged with an air of unwavering arrogance. "It's indeed a fine wine." However, despite this inner conviction, his pride kept him from expressing praise lightly. He only frowned slightly, indicating that the wine was barely drinkable. "It tastes good." His tone remained cold, but the slight upward curve of his lips seemed to inadvertently betray a hint of satisfaction. Then, with a casual wave of his hand, a brilliant flash of light appeared, and from his mysterious royal treasury, a jar of fine wine was retrieved. "Try this." Gilgamesh's voice carried a hint of command. Waver, the weakest of the 3, now became the waiter. He carefully lifted the jar, his hands trembling slightly, betraying his inner nervousness. His movements were a little clumsy, but he was completely serious. "This is also a rare and fine wine," Iskander commented after he finished the drink. He narrowed his eyes slightly, savoring the flavor, a look of satisfaction on his face. Gilgamesh snorted coldly and fell silent. He simply sat there quietly, his thoughts unpredictable. The three drank in silence, the atmosphere somewhat subdued. The air around them seemed frozen, broken only by the soft sounds of drinking. However, Weiss and Iskander broke the silence. They talked about everything from war to life, from ideals to the current situation. Iskander, with his unflinching wit, openly stated his reason for joining the Holy Grail War: "I want to regain my body and conquer the world." His voice was filled with dominance and determination, as if the world held the whole world at his feet. His eyes burned with the fire of battle, a thirst for conquest, a pursuit of glory. "I'm fighting for the root." Weiss put down his glass. "To further my magical abilities." Upon hearing the two words, a hint of pride flashed in his golden eyes, and he suddenly declared, "If you submit to me, I will grant you the Holy Grail." He raised his chin slightly, his condescending attitude evident, as if his words were an undeniable decree. "How frustrating." Iskander scratched his head, a resigned smile playing on his face. His burly frame swayed slightly, as if he were considering the proposal. "The Holy Grail isn't yours, all the treasures in the world belong to me," Gilgamesh said matter-of-factly. "The Holy Grail is just one of my countless collections." Of course, neither of them would submit to Gilgamesh. They were both men of pride and conviction, and would not bow easily to others. Iskander and Weiss exchanged glances, each seeing determination in their eyes. "Ha ha ha, just take what you like." Iskander opened his arms as if embracing the world. His laughter was hearty and heroic, filled with a thirst for challenge. Weiss smiled, his smile brimming with calm and composure. "What a shame. It's so rare for me to show mercy." Gilgamesh stood up, his posture erect and proud. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely tense, as if the air had solidified into solid matter. An oppressive atmosphere permeated the air, making everyone's heartbeat accelerate. A battle seemed imminent, the impending conflict like the calm before the storm, filled with unknown dangers and excitement. The three of them stood in a triangle, with a perfect distance between them, allowing them to attack at any time and defend at the critical moment. They were like three unshakable sculptures. Jin Shanshan stood there, his golden eyes revealing pride and majesty. He raised his chin slightly, exuding a kingly aura, as if the whole world was under his control. Iskander stood proudly, his body as if made of steel, full of power. His big hands tightly grasped the hilt of the sword, and as soon as the time came, he would draw the sword without hesitation and rush towards the enemy. Weiss's hands hung naturally, seemingly relaxed, but in fact he was ready to deal with any emergency at any time. Chapter 243: The Conqueror King. The king's army. Iskander's powerful voice boomed like thunder, unleashing an all-out, unreserved attack. The instantaneous eruption of immense magical power, like a raging tsunami, swept in all directions with unstoppable force. The four figures suddenly emerged from the quiet shrine into a breathtaking scene. Here, the sun hung high in the sky, its blazing rays piercing down like countless sharp swords, seemingly scorching the earth. Hot sand danced wildly, whipped by a fierce wind. The swirling dust obscured vision, creating a feeling of suffocating tension. The scorching heat, dry air, and swirling dust combined to create a suffocating atmosphere. An inherent barrier. Jin Shanshan raised his eyebrows slightly, a subtle flicker of surprise in his eyes. Interesting, his tone held a hint of admiration, yet his innate arrogance was still palpable. Iskander proudly ascended the wheel of divine might. The flying hoof thunderbolt pawed the ground restlessly, its powerful hooves stirring up a thick cloud of dust with each thud. The deep, resonant roar seemed to echo from ancient times. Amidst this roar, figures gradually emerged from the inherent barrier like ghosts. Their forms were blurry at first, like phantoms emerging from the mist, but as time passed, they became clearer and clearer. They quickly formed into a square formation, their movements in perfect unison. Their postures were erect, their gazes resolute, a well-trained army of steel. When the summons were complete, a vast army unfolded before everyone. This army, comprised of tens of thousands of men, emanated a powerful aura, like unconquerable gods of war. Each member of this army was a true heroic spirit, each with their own unique story and legend. However, due to the limitations of the King of Conqueror's abilities, none of the members possessed a noble phantasm. Furthermore, they were summoned using Iskander's power, not assigned to specific classes according to the rules of the Holy Grail War, and therefore lacked any classes or class-specific skills. Despite this, within this vast army, there were still scattered heroic spirits even more powerful than the King of Conquerors himself. These powerful heroic spirits lurked among the crowd, their auras reserved and deep, like volcanoes waiting for their moment to erupt. These were Iskander's men who had fought alongside him on numerous campaigns, enduring countless hardships and dangers alongside him, achieving immortal feats. Some within this legion would even become the founders of future dynasties, their presence imbuing the legion with even greater legendary significance. Even Alexander's beloved horse, Bucephalus, was summoned as a heroic spirit. The king's army embodied the bond between Alexander and his subjects, carrying their glory, dreams, and loyalty. On this battlefield, they would once again fight for the King of Conquerors, for glory. Each heroic spirit gripped their weapon tightly, their eyes ablaze with the fire of battle. Their hearts were filled with admiration and loyalty for the King of Conquerors, willing to sacrifice everything for him. Iskander stood majestically atop his magnificent chariot, his figure erect as a pine tree, like an unshakable mountain. He was filled with pride and satisfaction, his bright eyes like dazzling stars, gleaming with a fiery light. He slowly surveyed his army, each soldier's form clearly imprinted in his vision. The neatly arrayed ranks, the resolute and upright figures, the faces brimming with fighting spirit, all filled him with endless emotion. Finally, I can fight alongside you again, Iskander said excitedly, his voice resonant and powerful, piercing the heavens. He tightened his grip on the reins, the rough rope seeming to come alive in his hands. His heart was filled with a thirst for battle, a determination for victory. The flying hoof thunder bull, as if sensing his emotions, let out a deep roar and lunged forward, instantly reaching the forefront of the army. Its powerful frame was like lightning, brimming with strength and speed. Its hooves stamped the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust, announcing to the world the arrival of the King of Conquerors. Tens of thousands of soldiers followed Iskander, their gazes filled with admiration and adoration. Those fiery gazes seemed to melt steel. Their hearts were filled with a desire for victory, a pursuit of glory. Waver, also atop his chariot, could not bear the pressure. He was filled with nervousness and anxiety, avoiding eye contact with his soldiers. His heart was torn by conflict. On the one hand, he was proud to be Iskander's master, on the other, he was filled with dread for the coming battle. Ryder is truly remarkable, admired by so many, Waver thought silently. He gazed at Iskander's towering figure, a surge of admiration welling up in his heart. He knew he was only a supporting role in this war, but he was willing to fight for Iskander, for their glory. Suddenly, Waver felt his body lighten. Before he could react, Iskander's powerful arm lifted him up single-handed. Then, he gently placed Waver on the sand. Ryder, I want to fight with you, too. Waver's eyes were filled with determination and longing. He stared intently at Iskander. Ha ha ha! Iskander laughed heartily. That's enough. Now it's my turn to fight, Ryder. Waver's voice was tinged with reluctance and worry. He knew this battle would be incredibly difficult, and he wasn't sure if Iskander would return safely. Waver, you must survive. Iskander's eyes were filled with tenderness and concern. Tears welled up in Waver's eyes, but he resisted them. He knew now was not the time to cry, he had to stay strong. Ryder, as a master, I command you to win, Waver shouted, his voice filled with determination. Without hesitation, he used the command seal, and the mysterious power instantly enveloped Iskander. We must win this war, Waver shouted again. We must win, Waver shouted with all his strength, using 3 command spells in one breath. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244 begins. Iskander had never felt his magic so overflowing. He stood there quietly, feeling the powerful force surge through his body. He could clearly feel every strand of magic flowing, like a rushing river, flowing through his body, bringing him an unprecedented vitality. Of course victory is mine, Iskander roared, his voice echoing like thunder throughout the space. His eyes burned with a fervent desire for victory, a pursuit of glory. He gripped his sword tightly, the sharp blade gleaming brightly in the sunlight. He raised the sword high, pointing it at Jin Shanshan, declaring his determination. "Charge!" Iskander roared again, his voice filled with dominance and majesty. That command, like a war horn, instantly ignited everyone's fighting spirit. "Ha!" Tens of thousands of heroic spirits shouted in unison, their voices as heart-shaking as a landslide. With determined steps, they rushed towards Jin Shanshan. The mighty army surged forward like a torrent of steel, unstoppable. Their eyes shone with determination and courage. For their king, for victory, they charged unhesitatingly upon the enemy. Each heroic spirit gripped their weapon tightly, their figures gleaming in the sunlight. Their steps were synchronized and imbued with power. Their charge was like an unstoppable storm, ready to sweep across the battlefield. "Courage is commendable, but how foolish!" Gilgamesh's haughty voice rang out, as if declaring his opponent's fate. He raised his chin slightly, his eyes filled with disdain and contempt. He had every right to be so arrogant. After all, he was the hero king, possessing countless treasures and immense power. In his eyes, these tens of thousands of troops were but a swarm of ants. To challenge his authority was sheer presumption. Gilgamesh ignored them. He considered them mere treasures from his treasury, capable of being vanquished with a single wave of his hand. His mysterious and powerful king's treasure slowly unfolded, and instantly, tens of thousands of noble phantasms shimmered in golden light before everyone's eyes. They emanated a powerful aura, each one seemingly imbued with boundless power. With a gentle wave of his hand, tens of thousands of noble phantasms shot towards the army like meteors. "Shields raised," Iskander commanded decisively. His voice was resounding and powerful. The army, hearing the command, raised their shields in unison. "Idiots," Gilgamesh sneered. How could ordinary weapons possibly withstand a noble phantasm? These people's actions were sheer folly. His noble phantasms would easily destroy these presumptuous individuals. However, something unexpected happened. Tens of thousands of noble phantasms suddenly stopped in midair, bound by an invisible force, escaping his control. Gilgamesh's expression darkened. "Caster, you did this, you shouldn't mind a one-on-two fight." Weiss smiled, his smile tinged with calm confidence. "This is getting interesting." Gilgamesh narrowed his eyes slightly, his red pupils gleaming with excitement, as if he had discovered a truly fascinating toy. The corners of his mouth curled upwards, a confident and arrogant archizanate kingly aura was fully revealed at this moment. He raised his chin slightly, his eyes revealing a condescending scrutiny. "So what if you all come at me together?" Gilgamesh declared his invincibility, to the entire world. "Heaven's chain," Gilgamesh roared. Instantly, golden chains surged from the void like countless spirit snakes, quickly enveloping the entire space. "Struggle as much as you can, bastard," he sneered. Weiss, observing this, swiftly swung his wand. Countless iron rods materialized from thin air, shooting towards the heavens chain like sharp arrows. Like nails, they plunged into the ground, pinning it firmly to the earth. However, that chain was said to be capable of trapping even gods. Weiss knew he could only hold it for a few seconds. But it was enough. Boom, with a deafening roar, the entire space seemed to tremble. A flash of lightning shone. Distant ravage and domination, Iskander, steering the chariot pulled by the divine bull, charged towards Gilgamesh like lightning. The bull's hooves stomped the ground, stirring up clouds of dust, each step imbued with power. Iskander stood atop the chariot, his eyes ablaze with battle. The sword in his hand flashed with a cold light. The chariot's high speed tore through the air, emitting a sharp whistling sound. Iskander swung his sword, fiercely striking Gilgamesh's head. With immense force, the sword slashed through the air in a beautiful arc. "Arrogant," Gilgamesh roared, and a shield instantly appeared before him, protecting him. However, Iskander's sword was so powerful that it shattered the shield. The shattered shield scattered like glass, emitting a resounding sound. Immediately afterwards, a plume of lightning struck Jin Shanshan. The powerful current instantly coursed through his body, paralyzing him for a moment. A flicker of surprise flashed across his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by rage. The sword of separation appeared in Jin Shanshan's hand. Its blade shone with a dazzling light like the sun, making it difficult to look directly at it. Jin Shanshan gripped the hilt tightly, his eyes gleaming with a fierce murderous intent. With his movement, the sword of separation slashed towards Iskander with devastating force. The sword's force was unstoppable, as if it could split the world in two. Powerful sword energy surged through the air, emitting a sharp whistling sound. As if sensing mortal danger, the divine bull's massive body trembled slightly. Then, with a deep roar, It swiftly reversed course, its movement swift and decisive. The sword of the peril whizzed past Iskander's ear, and the sharp sword wind slashed across his cheek like a sharp blade, causing him to feel pain. The space behind him was shattered by this powerful slash, revealing the real world outside. Just this one blow has made my inherent barrier unstable. What a terrifying attack power. I must not be hit. Iskander marveled in his heart, and a layer of fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Iskander threw the reins and whipped the body of the sacred bull. The sacred bull pulled the chariot into the air, and the wheels spun in the air, causing gusts of wind. Trying to escape, the enraged Jin Shanshan would not let him go. Chapter 245 The Final Charge. A strangely shaped flying machine suddenly appeared. It was the Vimana, Gilgamesh's royal throne, a vessel of light crafted from gold and emeralds, capable of soaring through the heavens. The Vimana hovered silently in the air, like a brilliant star descending upon the earth. Its power came from a mercury-fueled sun crystal, a miraculous energy conversion process steeped in mystery. When activated, the sun crystal defied the laws of physics, capable of unimaginable speeds. Like a divine bird soaring freely, the Vimana soared through the heavens, transcending the constraints of time and space. The Vimana possessed not only astonishing speed but also formidable offensive power. It was equipped with a variety of noble phantasms, powerful enough to devastate any enemy. It even possessed advanced weaponry such as ancient nuclear warheads, capable of unleashing a devastating catastrophe upon Earth. In the blink of an eye, the Vimana, at lightning speed, had overtaken Iskander. A hint of surprise crossed Iskander's face. A drop of cold sweat formed on him, gleaming faintly in the sunlight. He muttered to himself, "Who is rider?" The two pursued each other through the air like twin meteors, their speed as swift as lightning, a sight too dazzling to behold. Streams of green light and purple lightning intertwined, a dazzling spectacle that evoked a dreamlike world. The green light danced across the sky like a green ribbon. The purple lightning roared like a giant purple dragon, unleashing terrifying power. Their figures traced beautiful arcs across the sky, as if two gods were engaged in a fierce battle. The entire sky was shrouded in their presence, the wind whistling in their ears. Boom! A resounding explosion, like rolling thunder, erupted suddenly. The force of the impact caused the surrounding air to distort violently. This fierce collision, once again, was as powerful as the collision of two stars. The energy waves released caused faint ripples in the surrounding space. The divine bull let out a painful and indignant roar, filled with endless resentment and despair. The terrifying force of the sword of separation cleaved the divine bull's massive and powerful body fiercely. Under the sharp blade, the divine bull's once majestic form trembled violently. The powerful impact spread through the divine bull's body, splitting the divine will in two. The divine will's once magnificent and sturdy structure seemed so fragile under the invincible power of the sword of separation, like a fragile toy. The shattered wheel fragments scattered in the air. Iskander plummeted from the sky, his figure like a kite with a broken string, rapidly descending under the relentless pull of gravity. He watched his once powerful noble phantasm destroyed in an instant, and an indescribable pain welled up within him. How could Gilgamesh miss this golden opportunity to press his advantage? His cold eyes betrayed murderous intent as he swiftly closed in on Iskander. Shoot! At that crucial moment, countless arrows whistled down like a torrential rain, intercepting Gilgamesh with immense force and precision. These arrows woven through the air into an impenetrable web, each one gleaming with a sharp gleam. They bought Iskander precious time, allowing him to regroup and regroup. Iskander landed gently on the ground, his heart filled with resentment and anger. Without the powerful noble phantasms of the divine bull and the divine wheel, his combat effectiveness was greatly diminished. However, he showed no fear, for he still had his trusted subordinates. The barrage of arrows descended like a swarm of locusts. Yet, none of them harmed Gilgamesh at all. The arrows were deflected by an invisible force the moment they reached him. The arrows fell to the ground with a crisp clatter. Scum, Jin Shanshan spat out with disdain. Surrounded by tens of thousands, Jin Shanshan stood proudly, like an unshakable mountain. He folded his arms across his chest, his posture brimming with confidence and arrogance. His eyes, filled with disdain and contempt, swept through the crowd like a sharp sword, as if scrutinizing a group of insignificant dents. He raised his chin slightly. Is this all you can do? You dare call yourself a king with this level of skill? That's ridiculous. His voice was as cold as the wind on a chilly night. It's true that I'm not good at fighting. Iskander slowly stood up, his posture still erect. Despite having just experienced a fierce battle, his eyes were filled with determination and courage. "But I still have my men." He was filled with trust and pride in his men. "Ha!" Tens of thousands of soldiers roared in unison, the sound like rolling thunder, shaking the entire world. They struck their swords against their shields, making a dull and powerful sound. Bang! Bang! The sound was like a battle horn, filled with power and determination. They formed a tight formation, surrounding Gilgamesh. Just them. Gilgamesh curled his lips in disdain, as if he were looking down upon a group of worthless beings. A sneer played on his lips, a smile filled with disdain and arrogance. Gilgamesh didn't wield the mighty sword of separation. Instead, he casually swung the heavenly chains, sweeping out like a raging python. Countless soldiers were instantly sent flying in its wake like leaves caught in a gust of wind. Their bodies arced through the air before plummeting heavily to the ground, dispersing into tiny points of light. Gilgamesh sat leisurely on his throne, his chin raised slightly. "These ants can't even touch the edge of my clothes. I've been underestimated." Iskander gritted his teeth, a surge of intense anger welling up within him. Seeing his proud legion so blatantly slighted was a profound blow to his pride. His eyes burned with rage, a response to the arrogance of the Golden. As if sensing his master's emotions, his beloved horse, Bucephalus, strode gracefully to Iskander's side, gently nuzzling his arm with its cheek. Without hesitation, Iskander mounted. He gripped the reins tightly. "Charge!" he roared, the sound resonating like thunder across the battlefield. Iskander led the charge towards the Golden, like an arrow from a bow, filled with unstoppable momentum. Behind him, tens of thousands of troops followed closely, their footsteps echoing across the land like muffled thunder. Chapter 246 The Holy Grail. Boring? Gilgamesh frowned slightly. The same attack seemed uninspired to him, completely lacking any interest. "Things are starting to get boring." He raised his chin slightly, scanning his surroundings. Gilgamesh looked at Weiss, standing in the distance, a hint of defiance in his eyes. "Aren't you going to fight, Caster?" Weiss's goal wasn't to fight, but to obtain the Holy Grail. In his view, as long as Gilgamesh could eliminate Iskander, the conditions for summoning the Holy Grail would be met. "Deal with Ryder first." Gilgamesh rose from his throne. He raised the sword of separation. "Star of creation of heaven and earth separation," he roared, an immense power surged from the sword, sweeping out like a torrent of destruction. The immense force of the attack instantly swept through the army of tens of thousands of heroic spirits. Those once brave and fearless heroic spirits seemed dwarfed by this overwhelming force. They were like fallen leaves swept by a gust of wind, instantly annihilated. The inherent barrier began to crumble under the powerful impact. Back in the real world, Iskander's towering figure was split in two, his eyes still gleaming with an unyielding glint. His body collapsed to the ground, his blood staining the surrounding ground red. The once majestic king had fallen in this brutal battle. "Ryder!" Waver cried out heartbreakingly, frantically throwing himself upon Iskander, his eyes filled with panic and grief. With trembling hands, he frantically cast magic in an attempt to heal. Threads of shimmering magic wrapped around Iskander's body like silken threads. "No need." Iskander weakly raised his hand, stopping Waver's attempt. His eyes revealed a calm and relieved expression. He could clearly sense that this body, composed of magical energy, had reached its limit, unable to withstand any further force. "It truly cannot compare to real flesh," he sighed softly, slowly closing his eyes with regret. His figure gradually faded into blur, and he finally returned to Valhalla, his own Caribbean world, with the heroic and carefree spirit of a king. Gilgamesh wielded the sword of separation, its tip pointed at Weiss, its blade radiating a chilling light. "You're the only one left." His voice was cold and commanding, as if announcing his opponent's fate. Weiss simply smiled, a smile filled with confidence and mystery. "Yes, you're the only one left. Are you challenging me, you bastard?" Gilgamesh's eyes widened in anger. His aura erupted instantly, bearing down on Weiss like a raging storm. Weiss ignored him and slowly opened her right hand. A shrunken berserker appeared in his palm. "Is that a heroic spirit?" Gilgamesh was momentarily taken aback, a hint of surprise in her eyes. Weiss clenched her right hand, and berserker dissipated into tiny specks of light. In the vast cavern beneath Ryuroji Temple in Fuyuki City, where a massive magic circle was drawn, the greater Holy Grail began to emit a powerful light. The light, as dazzling as the sun, instantly penetrated the rock and soil beneath. Then, the image of a golden cup emitting a mysterious glow gradually emerged from the light. This was the Holy Grail itself. It seemed to descend from another world, carrying with it boundless magic and mystical power. However, Gilgamesh's attention was completely unfocused on the Holy Grail. He stared intently at Weiss. This is truly intriguing. Who are you, anyway? Curiosity and doubt filled his heart. This mysterious figure had captured his attention from the very beginning. This person isn't a heroic spirit, yet he's deceived everyone. His goal is the Holy Grail. After Gilgamesh's summoning, the second intriguing person he encountered was Weiss. The first was Katamin Kairi, the Twisted Man. Not only Gilgamesh, but also the Holy Church, overseeing the Holy Grail War, was in a state of panic. Who is this guy? This is a grave mistake. This sudden turn of events caught them off guard. But it was too late. The Holy Grail had already descended. However, by then, the Holy Grail had been tainted by all the evil of this world. Angoramanayu, endless black mud poured out of the Holy Grail, tumbling and surging like a living thing. Soon, it had engulfed the shrine and spread across the city. Disgusting, Jin Shanshan angrily floated into the air to avoid being stained by the mud. This mud was the embodiment of all negative human emotions, greed, jealousy, hatred, and exuded a sickening odor. Time to test my hypothesis. Weiss took out his mind staff. The mind stone shimmered continuously, its light flickering, as if urging Weiss urgently. Each flicker spoke of an impatient desire. Don't be impatient, Weiss whispered. Bang! Weiss slammed the mind staff down on the ground. Instantly, a powerful force surged from the mind staff, spreading outward like a wave. This force quickly dispersed the surrounding black mud, dispersing it like a dark cloud swept by a strong wind. However, the mud refused to give up easily and immediately surrounded him again. The surging black mud, like venomous black snakes, advanced on Weiss with bared fangs and claws. Then you'll have a good feast. Weiss's lips curled slightly. The mind gem erupted with dazzling light, and a powerful suction emanated from it, drawing the black mud continuously into the gem. Angry Manayu could be described as a fusion of human negativity and psyche. He embodied the deepest negative emotions of greed, jealousy, and hatred, a being of pure malevolence. Any ordinary person contaminated by the black mud would sink into depravity, darken, and be consumed by the darkness within. They would lose their sanity, controlled by negative emotions, and become slaves to darkness. Even heroic spirits were powerless to resist him, for Angry Manayu's power was too immense. It could corrode their minds and cause them to lose their true selves. However, the mind gem was one of the very origins of the universe, possessing boundless power. The malice of Earth's humans was but an appetizer before the mind gem. The mind gem could easily absorb this evil, transforming it into its own strength. It was like a bottomless pit. What is that? Gilgamesh narrowed his eyes slightly, his hawk-like gaze fixed intently on the dazzling mind gem. He tilted his head slightly, his golden hair gleaming like gold in the light. Gilgamesh had always favored magnificent things. It was his innate aesthetic pursuit as a king. In his eyes, only the most magnificent things in the world were worthy of his reverence. The mind gem's dazzling brilliance, like the brightest star in the night sky, emanated a bewitching allure. The light flowing within the gem seemed to be surging with myriad mysterious powers, and every facet of it reflected brilliant colors, like a dreamlike painting, captivating the senses. Without a doubt, the mind gem perfectly met his demanding aesthetic taste for the magnificent. Return it to me. Gilgamesh had already deemed the mind gem his. Throughout his long reign, every treasure in the world was his. And this mysterious and magnificent mind gem was no exception. Chapter 247 End. This isn't yours. Weiss met Gilgamesh's oppressive gaze without flinching. All the treasures in the world belong to me. Gilgamesh's words radiated absolute confidence and dominance. Convincing Gilgamesh was a daunting task, and Weiss knew this from the start. Gilgamesh was renowned for his arrogance and stubbornness, his convictions nearly unchangeable. Weiss never attempted to persuade this almighty king. He knew that in Gilgamesh's heart, his authority was unchallenged. The last bit of black mud was devoured by the mind stone, the inky evil instantly vanishing beneath the stone's dazzling light. Angry Manayu, the being that represented all evil in the world, was like a mayfly before the mind stone, unable to stir a single ripple. Weiss could clearly sense the mind stone's satisfaction, like a human's after a full meal. It was an indescribable feeling. Scum! Seeing Weiss ignore him, Gilgamesh's fury instantly ignited. His aura erupted like a raging storm, its force causing the air around him to tremble. Sinking, Weiss whispered softly. He had used the Mind Stone to construct a world for Gilgamesh, one filled with illusion and delusion. In this world, Gilgamesh was trapped in an endless fog, unable to extricate himself. His vision was a blur, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. It could hold him back for at least a few seconds, a brief moment, but for Weiss, it was more than enough. Weiss reached out to touch the Holy Grail, his heart filled with anticipation and nervousness. He slowly uttered his wish, "Let me witness the origin of this world." From Weiss's perspective, the world faded to black, nothing around him but an endless void. A suffocating silence reigned, as if the entire world had fallen into deep sleep. Ahead lay a pinprick of light, and he cautiously reached for it, as if grasping a fragile dream. Countless information instantly flooded his mind, a shock beyond words. He saw how this world was born, the origin and development of the universe. He beheld the source of magic, a mysterious and powerful force that permeated the entire history of the world. His eyes glazed over, his brain instantly overloaded by the sheer volume of information. He felt as if he were immersed in an endless ocean of knowledge, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. His thoughts were in turmoil, unable to withstand the sudden onslaught. Pain erupted from the depths of his soul, the intense stinging sensation like countless sharp daggers, mercilessly piercing the depths of his brain. Weiss clutched his head tightly with both hands, the pain evident on his face. The splitting headache was like a terrifying storm, threatening to completely shatter his sanity, rendering clear thought impossible. At this moment, his condition was truly dire. His body trembled slightly, straining under immense pressure. Fine beads of sweat covered his forehead. His breathing became rapid and erratic. Yet, despite the immense pain, he maintained a faint smile. It was a smile of satisfaction and relief, a smile filled with a sense of accomplishment. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he recalled the incredibly mysterious and magnificent scene he had just witnessed, the origins of a world. He had gained an unprecedented depth of understanding of magic and its power, as if someone, after groping in the darkness for a long time, had suddenly seen a bright ray of light, opening the door to a whole new world. Once he had fully digested the vast ocean of information in his mind, his strength would experience a qualitative leap. But right now, the most important thing was to leave this place. Gilgamesh was about to awaken from the illusory world. In his weakened state, Wes was no match for Gilgamesh. Without hesitation, Wes traveled back to the Marvel world. Across the vast universe, a golden spaceship streaked by like a dazzling meteor. This ship was a vessel reserved only for the royal family of Asgard, and every detail of it embodied the majesty of Asgard. This was Thor's gift to Wes. After Weiss returned, he felt as if all his strength had been drained from him. He slumped limply in a chair, a moment elapsed before the pounding headache finally subsided. His entire body was drenched in sweat, his clothes clinging to him, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. Frowning, he decided to take a shower to ease his fatigue and discomfort. The sound of running water filled the bathroom. The water, just the right temperature, gently washed over Weiss. After about 20 minutes, Weiss slowly emerged in his bathrobe. His hair was still damp, and the moisture still lingered from his body, filling the spaceship with a refreshing scent. He stood quietly by the window, his gaze piercing the transparent porthole at the vast, boundless universe beyond. In the darkness, countless brilliant stars twinkled like gems set on black velvet, beautiful yet filled with endless unknowns. Distant galaxies and mysterious nebulae intertwined into a magnificent canvas within the endless darkness. Weiss narrowed his eyes slightly, pondering his next plan. His destination was Xander, the headquarters of the Nova Corps, a planet steeped in legend. Xander boasted a formidable military and advanced technology, granting it a pivotal position in the universe. Its security and order were excellent, making it the perfect first stop for Weiss's journey to connect with cosmic civilization. Anticipation welled up in his heart. But then he froze, his expression frozen. "I think I've forgotten something," he whispered softly. He stretched out his hand and slashed through the air. Space seemed to be slashed by an invisible blade, a crack appearing. Matau Korea and Matau Sakura slowly emerged from the crack. Curiously, they surveyed their unfamiliar surroundings, their eyes filled with surprise and confusion. "Where is this place?" Matau Korea's voice tinged with nervousness and uneasiness. He glanced around, taking in the technologically advanced equipment and unfamiliar decorations, his mind filled with questions. His gaze finally fell on Weiss, anticipating his response. Weiss briefly explained. "So we're in outer space right now, Matau Korea's mouth dropped open slightly after hearing Weiss's explanation, his eyes filled with shock. He walked to the window, looked out at the vast, starry sky, and muttered to himself, "So there really are aliens." Matau Sakura's eyes widened, her face filled with curiosity as she watched a meteorite drift past a window. Chapter 248 Xander. After a brief discussion, the two decided to remain in Weiss's space. They would decide what to do after they healed Matau Sakura. However, it seemed Matau Sakura had a different opinion. She simply sat by the window, quietly gazing at the starry sky outside. "Sakura," Matau Korea said, lifting her up. "Very beautiful, isn't it?" Matau Sakura nodded, a delighted smile on her face. The boundless universe, at first, resembled a vast, vibrant painting. Each glittering star was a dazzling gem, and mysterious nebulae woven like a dreamy veil, weaving together a breathtaking spectacle. However, as time slowly passed, the once awe-inspiring scene gradually lost its initial allure. The universe was simply too vast. Even with a spaceship hurtling at breakneck speed, the boundless expanse still gave the illusion of stillness. The deep darkness was like an endless abyss. The distant stars, though gleaming, remained unreachable, gradually growing dull and tedious during the long journey. The monotonous darkness and the unchanging starry sky seemed to immerse the soul in a kind of silence. A few hours later, Matau Sakura was already drowsy. Her small figure seemed exceptionally frail, her head nodding like a flower swaying in the wind. Her eyes were half closed, her long eyelashes fluttering slightly, and her lovely face was filled with fatigue. Her eyes, once filled with curiosity, were now hazy, and she could slip into deep sleep at any moment. "You two should return to the space for now. We're about to make a space jump, and your bodies won't be able to withstand it." Matau Korea nodded slightly, his face showing understanding. After reaching the designated coordinates, he gently pressed the button. Instantly, Weiss felt his entire body being stretched and kneaded, as if he had become a soft ball of dough, being manipulated by an invisible and mysterious force. The spaceship entered the wormhole, and the surrounding space began to distort and warp, and colorful lights flickered like a dream. A few seconds later, the spaceship burst out of the wormhole, and Weiss exhaled. The feeling of space jumping through a wormhole was similar to paragliding. Weiss felt no discomfort, his body had already adapted. A voice from the ship announced, "Welcome to Xander. Please follow the instructions." The mechanical voice echoed through the silent space. The ship activated its automatic navigation and slowly sailed toward its destination. Countless ships surrounded him, all shapes and sizes. Some were like towering mountains, while others were even smaller than Weiss's ship, nimbly weaving among them. Their designs were equally diverse. Some were whimsical, like works of art, brimming with imagination and creativity. Their unique designs were eye-catching, like a breathtaking art exhibition. Others were more conventional, utilitarian, simple yet efficient. However, everyone followed the instructions and entered the harbor. Once inside, they noticed even more ships. The harbor, larger than a city, was densely packed with ships. Yet, there was no chaos, everything seemed orderly. Each ship was in its proper position, operating according to prescribed procedures. A few minutes later, Weiss had parked his ship. As soon as he disembarked, a circular craft flew by. "Excuse me," the aircraft asked a series of questions, and Weiss patiently answered them. Finally, it left a message, "Have a pleasant journey," and a pair of high-tech glasses before departing. Weiss curiously put them on. The high-tech glasses looked exceptionally delicate in his hands. As they gently rested on his nose, they blended seamlessly with his face, seamlessly blending in. First, he began choosing a language. The universe is so vast, countless civilizations exist on countless planets, each potentially boasting a unique language. The sheer number of languages is mind-boggling. These glasses are a knowledge base, documenting information on the vast majority of races and languages in the universe. They can translate in real time, making communication between different races seamless. No matter how complex the language, these glasses can be understood instantly. Furthermore, the glasses also feature information on various attractions and cuisines. Each planet has its own unique landscapes and delicacies. These glasses are like a cosmic travel guide. They provide detailed descriptions of each planet's famous attractions, from magnificent galactic landscapes to mysterious alien ruins. They also offer recommendations for various delicious dishes. Essentially, these glasses are an upgraded version of a translation app, a diamping app, and a ride-hailing app. Not only can they help people understand different languages, they can also provide a wide range of information. There's even an even more advanced version, requiring only a small chip implanted in the back of the brain. It has all the functionality of the glasses, but with even greater convenience. However, Weiss didn't want to install something strange in his head. Aliens of all shapes and sizes emerged from the port. Some were tall and mighty, others petite and delicate, some were covered in hard scales, others in soft fur, some had multiple eyes, others sported bizarre tentacles. The sheer diversity of species in the universe is truly astonishing. Weiss encountered a variety of aliens, and their appearance and behavior were eye-opening. According to human standards, most aliens were bizarre, even ugly. Their body structures and appearance differed dramatically from those of humans, making them difficult to accept. The sight of this would surely stun the ordinary person, as it was completely beyond their comprehension. Xander's technological advancements were unparalleled in the vast universe. Entering the cities of Xander, one's gaze is filled with towering skyscrapers. The towering structures, resembling mythical giants, are majestic and imposing. The architectural style exudes a strong futuristic feel, with every line flowing and dynamic, like a meticulously crafted masterpiece. The massive skyscrapers are meticulously constructed from a high-strength alloy, meticulously refined through countless scientific experiments, resulting in an incredibly strong structure. These magnificent buildings are not only visually stunning, but also boast a variety of advanced functions. Automatic temperature control systems intelligently adjust the indoor temperature based on fluctuating outdoor and indoor temperatures, ensuring a constant and comfortable environment. Their air purification capabilities are even more powerful, utilizing advanced air filtration technology to rapidly remove harmful substances and impurities from the air, providing fresh, pure air. Whether in the scorching summer or the cold winter, or amidst sandstorms and other harsh conditions, these buildings provide a safe and comfortable haven. Xander's transportation system is exceptionally advanced, with streamlined spacecraft swiftly shuttling between cities. The spacecraft is equipped with a state-of-the-art navigation system and comfortable seats, allowing passengers to experience ultimate comfort while enjoying high-speed flight. On the ground, the maglev train travels smoothly at an astonishing speed. The train's spacious and bright interior, plus comfortable and soft seats, and advanced entertainment systems and communication equipment ensure passengers experience neither boredom nor fatigue during their journey. Chapter 249, Land of Nothingness. Weiss slowly boarded the maglev train. The moment he stepped through the door, a gentle electronic chime echoed, and a fee was automatically deducted from his account. As for the account and the money, it was because, knowing Weiss's desire to travel the universe, Frigga thoughtfully opened one for him and deposited a substantial sum. Asgard is a renowned entity throughout the universe, maintaining close ties with other civilizations. For a powerful and influential Asgardian, setting up an account and identity for Weiss was a piece of cake. Sitting in the maglev train, Weiss felt the smooth yet swift ride. The scenery flew by, and time seemed compressed in this high-speed journey. Soon, he arrived at the very center of Xander. The people of Xander respect diverse cultures and beliefs. They welcome people from other worlds with an open mind, actively engaging with them and integrating with them. This open and inclusive culture has made Xander one of the hubs of cultural exchange in the universe. This, in turn, has resulted in a rich and diverse culture, with remarkable achievements in art, literature, and music. Most importantly, Xander has developed highly efficient and clean energy technology. They cleverly harness the planet's internal energy and cosmic radiation to provide a continuous source of power for the entire planet. This advanced energy utilization not only makes Xander more environmentally friendly but also lays a solid foundation for its sustainable development. Prices are extremely low, and many public facilities are free. This makes life on Xander easy and enjoyable for everyone who visits. Every Xandarian smiles confidently. What a vibrant planet! Weiss leisurely strolled through the streets of Xander, his eyes drawn to the technologically advanced shops. Intrigued, he wandered into some of the shops, where the dazzling array of goods was dazzling. Among the many novelties, Weiss immediately caught his eye with the latest model of a maintenance robot. The robot's design was incredibly sophisticated, with artificial skin so delicate and lifelike it was practically indistinguishable from the real thing. Without a close look, it was impossible to tell it was a robot, completely lacking the mechanical feel of traditional robots. Its every movement was as natural and fluid as that of an ordinary human. From its gait to the subtle movements of its hands, it felt like a living being. This maintenance robot was powered primarily by two clean, environmentally friendly energy sources, solar energy and electricity. When the sun was abundant, it efficiently absorbed the sun's energy to power its operations. In the absence of sunlight, it could switch to electric power and continue its duties. After leaving the shop, the maintenance robot followed Wes closely. Over the next few days, Wes explored Xander to his heart's content. He wandered through the bustling streets, taking in the planet's unique charm. He toured its magnificent architecture, marveling at the ingenuity and creativity of the Xandarians. That evening, Wes wandered into a lively bar, where he met some adventurous travelers. From these adventurers, Wes purchased some precious star maps. These maps meticulously depicted various galaxies and mysterious locations throughout the universe. While carefully studying the maps, one location piqued Wes's interest. He had grown tired of Xander. "I hope that place won't disappoint me." Weiss entered the coordinates into the ship's navigation system. As the command was confirmed, the ship's engines emitted a deep, powerful roar. The ship sped through the vastness of space, and after several space jumps, it finally arrived at its destination. In the deep, dark void of space, stars twinkled in the distance, but they could not illuminate this chaotic land. The massive head of a god, as massive as the moon, floated silently, casting a vast shadow and imbuing the entire area with an oppressive and mysterious atmosphere. From time to time, spaceships shuttled by, their engine lights flickering in the darkness, as faint as fireflies. At the harbor, various types of spaceships were docked in a chaotic manner, their metal hulls reflecting a cold, hard luster in the dim light. The sheer size of this head alone suggested the unimaginable size of its original owner. Legends claim that the head belonged to a former member of the Celestials, but this was merely a legend, unconfirmed. Besides Weiss, there were numerous other ships of various shapes and sizes, each with its own agenda. Order was a far cry from being achieved here. Ships jostled in the chaos, like a school of lost fish, with no discernible pattern. Some even engaged in direct confrontation, their fierce fire weaving a dangerous web across the dark space. Before they even reached the void, several ships had already been ruthlessly shot down in the chaotic strife, reduced to flaming wreckage that faded into the darkness of space. The void itself was a haven for interstellar pirates, looters, and other dangerous individuals, resting and trading their loot. It was a place rife with danger and uncertainty, with untold threats lurking around every corner. One ship, seeing Weiss's lone ship, saw an opportunity to exploit and bully. They issued a threatening signal, demanding that Weiss vacate his position. Weiss ignored their unreasonable demands, ignoring them. Consequently, the other ship opened fire, attempting to coerce Weiss into submission. However, Weiss's spaceship quickly opened its protective barrier, which remained intact under the impact of the artillery fire. Weiss decisively issued the order, fire. In an instant, the spaceship shot out a golden ray, which directly penetrated the opponent's spaceship. The spaceship exploded in a ball of fire, and all the crew members inside were killed. Seeing this, the others immediately realized that Weiss was not someone to be trifled with, and no one dared to cause trouble anymore. Weiss calmly controlled the spaceship and slowly docked it at the port. Although the void is chaotic, it also has its own rules. No matter how fierce the conflicts outside, once you enter here, you must abide by the rules here, otherwise you will be attacked by everyone. Even predators hope to have a place to rest. This is an unspoken rule formed over hundreds of years, and no one has dared to violate such rules so far. Chapter 250 Black Market. The entire void seemed shrouded in a thick, gloomy haze, like a forgotten, dark corner. There was hardly a glimmer of color here, and only a few lights flickered tenuously in the endless darkness, faint and unsteady like candles in the wind. The ground was muddy, a product of countless years of accumulated dirt and sewage. With every step, the sticky texture beneath his feet felt like a swamp. The stench was strong and pungent, nauseating. Weiss frowned slightly, a hint of disgust in his eyes. He quickly pulled out a filter and put it on. It completely blocked out the unbearable stench, allowing him to continue his journey in this harsh environment. Every person here was a ruthless desperado, their eyes revealing a fierce determination, like a pack of hungry wolves, ready to pounce on any potential prey. They glared at Weiss with unbridled hostility, their gazes devoid of any warmth, only cold calculation and greed. In this chaotic and cruel place, humans themselves could become commodities, bought, sold, traded, and exploited at will. They cared little for the lives of others, only their own interests and desires. As Weiss walked, he could sense several groups of people watching him with ill intentions. They silently memorized his features, waiting for the moment he left the void to pounce, robbing him of any wealth he might possess or selling him to those in need of slavery. Herr Weiss's lips curled up slightly in a sneer. He knew their intentions well, and decided to take the initiative. Weiss approached one of the groups. Among them was a red-skinned individual with a single horn. Seeing Weiss approach, he wore a provocative smile and whistled at him. "What are you doing?" "Trying to lick my..." He spewed a stream of obscenities, his words utterly vulgar. Weiss looked up, his gaze meeting his own like a dagger. Instantly, the red-skinned figure froze there, motionless. His companions, sensing something was amiss, tensed up, quickly drawing their weapons and pointing them at Weiss, shouting, "Asshole, what have you done?" Weiss ignored them, paying them no attention. A moment later, Weiss finished reading Xia Hong's memories and, without hesitation, turned and left. "Hey!" Xia Hong's companions, unwilling to let Weiss go, tried to stop him. However, just as they were about to act, one of them felt a sharp pain in his waist. He lowered his head, horrified to see that Xia Hong's dagger had pierced his waist. "Why?" His eyes widened, his face filled with disbelief. Xia Hong remained silent, expressionlessly drawing her dagger and frantically attacking the others. The sounds of fierce fighting echoed in the corner of the void, but this did not slow Weiss down. It was as if everything behind him had nothing to do with him. From Xia Hong's memories, he knew the location of a black market where he might find what he needed. A heavily armed patrol stood at the entrance. Each one clad in heavy armor, clutching advanced weapons, their eyes wary. Weiss arrived at the entrance and paid the entrance fee. He was struck by the sight as he entered. Though it might be called a black market, its expanse rivaled the size of a city. Countless stalls and shops were scattered throughout the vast area, bustling with activity and a clamorous bustle. Plunderers and interstellar pirates from almost the entire galaxy converged here, using it as the primary trading post. These individuals, hailing from diverse planets and races, carried treasures plundered from every corner of the universe, seeking buyers or exchanging them for items they needed. Their possessions were truly astonishing, ranging from antiques from lost civilizations to cutting-edge technology, from rare gemstones to biological specimens. However, finding anything truly valuable from these cunning and greedy individuals is no easy task. Their mastery of disguise and deception makes every transaction fraught with traps and risks. The black market, in its most literal form, is no different from a regular bazaar. There are the same bustling crowds, a dazzling array of goods, and the resounding cries of vendors. However, the items sold here are strictly prohibited. Items deemed dangerous, illegal, or taboo are openly displayed and traded here. Energy guns, spaceships, planetary coordinates, slaves of various appearances and races, things considered untouchable in normal society, are now traded here. Weiss strolled through the black market for hours, his gaze darting from stall to stall, his heart never stirred. He found nothing that caught his eye, though the items on sale were certainly eye-opening. Items ranged from a delicate energy gun powerful enough to penetrate heavy armor to a battered but still capable spaceship to the coordinates of a planet. There were also slaves of various strange races, caged in cages, their eyes filled with fear and despair. However, none of these items piqued Weiss's interest. Just as Weiss was about to turn and leave, a pleasant voice echoed in his ear. "Is the customer dissatisfied with the goods here?" Weiss looked over and saw a blue-skinned woman standing before him. A long, slender tail trailed behind her. By human standards, she was undoubtedly a rare beauty. Her features were delicate and soft, her blue skin the color of the deep ocean, radiating a unique allure. She wore the same armor as the guards, but this one was more form-fitting, clearly a more advanced version. The armor tightly hugged her body, accentuating her graceful figure while also exuding a sense of immense strength. The head of the black market, Weiss speculated, narrowing his eyes slightly. The woman smiled, revealing a set of perfectly white teeth. "It's just one of them. You can call me Anya." After saying this, Anya turned around gracefully, her long hair fluttering gently as she turned around. "These are just ordinary goods. If you want the good stuff, follow me." Weiss's heart moved. He hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to follow Anya. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.